A fidgety Bella couldn't contain herself any longer as she saw the man climb from the cabin of the mid-sized delivery truck. She sprinted from her aunt's office towards the loading dock as he approached, throwing her arms around his waist as she collided with him, knocking him back half a step. "Mr. Hank! You're back!" He laughed. "Hey, sweet girl. I am, at least for several weeks." Looking at the cardboard tray of Starbucks drinks that he was holding, she smiled and asked hopefully, "Are those for us?" He returned her smile and replied, "They are. Your aunt told me what to pick up for each of you." Bella beamed. She loved the afternoon treats that Hank would bring for her, her Aunt Morgan, and her older sister, Amber. He had been gone for several weeks, having told her that he had another job that required travel from time to time. He was wearing his food bank uniform like the last time she saw him, which was cargo shorts, a golf shirt, and a baseball hat, with the food bank logo, similar to the other drivers that worked or volunteered for the food bank. Her aunt, actually her great-aunt, managed the food bank. She and her sister hung out there during most of the summer. Recently she and her middle school-aged sister had begun attending summer day camps, which they loved. When the camps ended for the day, they would spend their afternoons with their aunt until time to go home. The girls, along with their mother, lived with her aunt and Uncle Bill. Morgan and Bella took their drinks and thanked him. Hank handed a frappuccino to Amber, who grunted out a thank you. Morgan was displeased with that response, but she didn't push the girl. She said, "Thanks for the drinks, Hank. You know you didn't have to. I'm happy to do it." Turning back to the little girl, he asked, "Bella, your aunt tells me you've been going to summer camps while I was gone. What have you been doing?" The precocious 8-year-old was more than happy to tell him all about what she and her sister have been doing for the last 3 weeks. They had received scholarships to attend, which covered all of their expenses. Each week had been different. One of them was a technology camp where she received a new iPad, and her sister received a MacBook Air during the course. Surprisingly, they were allowed to keep them. Bella filled his ear for half an hour regaling her adventures for the last several weeks. Hank asked, "Amber, are you liking your new laptop?" This time he did get a smile because she was thrilled to have it. "I am. It came with a typing app, and I'm teaching myself how to type." "I'll bet you are doing great." Morgan grinned at him. She hadn't been able to get him to tell her if he had given the girls the camp scholarships nor if he had provided the tech toys, but he didn't deny it either. She and the girl's mother had been stunned by both developments, though obviously pleased that this nice man, who had been a sporadic volunteer for years, had taken an interest in the girls. Bella asked, "Where did you say you had to go?" "Australia and Singapore." "Do you know where those are?" She replied, "I know about Australia, but not, what was the other one?" "Singapore." "Let me see your iPad and I'll show you." He quickly pulled up Google Maps and zoomed out the map so he could slowly show her where it was on the globe relative to Asheville and Australia. Then he loaded an app on her iPad called Stack the Countries, which would help her with her geography. Hank spent some time telling her about his work trip to each place and what he did while there. Afterwards, he returned to the loading dock where he needed to unload the truck and then help restock some of the shelves at the food bank. He was still working on restocking when Morgan and the girls told him goodbye for the day. Such cute, sweet girls, he thought. They reminded him of his kids when they were younger. He was glad he could give them a little joy while he was there during the summer. Getting away from Pittsburgh for a little while had proven to be a good decision. The next day, Tuesday, the process was repeated when Hank arrived with more food donations that needed to be unloaded, along with drinks for the girls. Bella asked Hank, "Do you work at night, too?" He chuckled, "Not at the office. I work at the tire factory near Hendersonville in the mornings. I'm working here in the afternoons this summer, and I usually work a few hours each evening at home, unless I need a break. I think I'll try to go fishing one evening this week. Can I come too?" "I don't think your mom will let you come with me by yourself. Maybe if your Uncle Bill would agree to come, she'll let you come along." He turned to Morgan and looked inquisitively. She laughed. "Are you kidding? My husband is retired and doesn't need an excuse to go fishing. Just give him the date and the time, and he'll be there." "Good, let's try Thursday afternoon." He can bring his pole if he wants, but I'm bringing plenty of gear and beer.
With an offer like that, you can count on him.
Bella was excited because she had only been fishing one other time in her life and she could barely remember it because it was so long ago. Even Amber had difficulty faking her disinterest. Thursday afternoon, the same week, found Bill arriving at the food bank to swap cars with Morgan, so he could drive the girls to the lake where he suggested they fish.
Hank had his SUV loaded with gear, drinks, and snacks.
Bill had a couple of rods, and Hank had half a dozen. The plan was to drop some chicken livers deep using corks as monitors for the catfish and some live minnows for the nearby crappie. The afternoon started slow, but when they switched from minnows to grubs and then to spinners, things picked up. Hank and Bill would cast for the girls and let them reel. Once the fish started biting, the girls were very excited. Of course, the hits always come in bunches. As soon as they had hooked their fifth crappie, one of the corks attached to a chicken liver dunked under the water. Bella was still reeling in her crappie, and Hank had noticed that Bill seemed to have an injury that prevented him from moving quickly, so he hopped over to the rod that was pulsing and grabbed it. Then he gave it to Amber and encouraged and helped her to reel in the catfish, letting her do most of the work. That was quite the fight and a lot of fun for her. It took Amber 10 minutes to finally get it into the net, but when she did, she had a nice 4-pound channel cat. Bill and Hank praised her for her efforts, and suddenly, she was feeling pretty good about hanging around Hank. Hank arranged for Uber Eats to deliver a bunch of Bojangles chicken, biscuits, and sides, and they sat under a big oak tree to eat.
It turned into a great evening.
Morgan stopped by later and drove the girls back so they could get cleaned up and go to bed. They had summer camp the next morning. The men cleaned the fish and put them in a cooler so Bill could take them home, promising a fish fry soon. Bill enjoyed himself, also, and was thrilled that the girls had such a good time. After the girls had left, while they were cleaning the fish, Bill asked, "Hank, the only thing that Morgan has told me about you is that you've been a long-time volunteer and that you work at the tire factory near here. But based on that relatively new Honda Pilot you're driving, your suspected involvement in those summer camps, your manner of speaking, and not even thinking twice about having food delivered all the way out here, I'm guessing there is more to you than that just being the average factory worker."
Hank chortled and said, "Honestly, Bill, there isn't much to me at all.
I'm from Pittsburgh, where the factory headquarters are located.
I travel some and have a project that allows me to be at this site some this summer. My family likes Asheville, and we have a vacation house here, so it's easy for me to work here.
I'm thinking about trying to figure out how I can work from here more often."
So you are more than just a factory worker?
I am.
I'm responsible for all of the company's finances. How about you? What did you do before you retired?
I was a mailman and drove a postal truck. I was hit by another car several years ago, which instantly retired me and is why you see me limping around. I'll never be 100% again, but I get a little better each year. I have a 2-acre garden that occupies me most of the day during the summer. The girls and/or their mom will help me a little on some mornings, but it's mostly my summer hobby.
Bill thought for a moment and continued, "So, based on what you said a moment ago, does that mean you have CFO after your name?"
Hank nodded. That and a few other overhyped letters.
Bill asked, "I see a ring on your finger. Is your wife still in Pittsburgh? Is she coming down?"
She's traveling for work also. If she isn't going to be home, I use my project as an excuse to work from here, because I like it here.
She's been doing a lot more traveling, and I've repeatedly told her that I'm not happy about it."
Then he shrugged his shoulders and said, "I'm not sure what's going to happen next." It was Bill's turn to nod.
"Any kids?"
"2. A son in college and a daughter that graduated with a degree in marketing and has been out for a year."
"How about you?"
2, but they are in their 30s and live in Charlotte with their families."
3 grandkids so far.
5 if you include Amber and Bella, and I like including them."
Hank nodded. He could understand that.
Bill continued, "Thank you for today. I don't suspect you could do this all the time, but if the mood strikes you again, let me know and we'll come back."
It was easy to see that the girls had a good time too. Hank said, "You can count on it."
Once Hank got home, he put the gear away and took a shower. As he crawled into bed, he checked his phone, and for the 10th night in a row, there were no messages nor texts from Catalina. Or Kat, his wife. At 7 a.m. the next morning, Friday, Hank pulled into the parking lot of the factory where he would borrow a small conference room for the morning, like he always did when visiting, since there were not any extra offices for him to use. With one of the big bosses in town, everyone was on their best behavior. Though, the longer he stayed, the more the workers relaxed. He felt like he had fairly good relationships with several people at the plant at all levels of responsibility. Just before he exited his vehicle to enter the plant, his phone started beeping. He answered a Skype. "Hey Scott, what's going on? How's Barcelona?" Scott and his wife, Tina, were part of Kat's production team. Scott handled the camera and audio, and Tina was the director. They are the heart and soul of his wife's crew, or at least they were. What had started as just Catalina, the kids, and himself helping her start up a side gig away from her corporate job at Heinz, had slowly grown into a successful career as a Martha Stewart Bob Villa crossbreed. She could cook up a storm, had the vision on how to redo kitchens, and succeeded in turning that into a hit PBS show from the western part of the Northeast to the eastern part of the Midwest, including from the Upper Finger Lakes in New York, down to Richmond, and as far west as Indianapolis, including some fans in North Carolina and Tennessee. Their big breakthrough came one night at a Pittsburgh Penguins tailgate party. She, Hank, and a neighbor were throwing a posh tailgate party at a Penguins game, giving away free samples of her food, and selling a cookbook full of her recipes. She was dressed stylishly, as many do at the Penguins games. These aren't Flyers or Bruins fans, and a cameraman and a reporter happened to stop by. Catalina ended up on camera, and soon thereafter she was on local TV. Being beautiful and of Spanish birth certainly helped. She sounded like Penelope Cruz, also Spanish, and looked like Salma Hayek, with an effervescent personality like Sofia Vergara. She quickly began playing up her Spanish heritage and style, and even used her maiden name, Nieves, for her TV appearances. Because of her luscious figure, plenty of people referred to her as the Spanish Nigella Lawson. When she and Hank decided that she needed a separate studio kitchen for filming, they decided to film the entire thing, from talking with the architects to working with the kitchen supply dealer and the heavy equipment contractors. This was when Scott and Tina, a couple in their late 20s, were brought in to begin the production planning, Tina's forte and Scott for the filming. Hank and the kids did everything, or tried to, before then. The small building was built on the back of their 2-acre property north of Pittsburgh. Hank and Catalina did all the landscaping and interior work in and around the small barn-like building to create a filming location much like Ina Garten's barn on Long Island. What started out as a mix of YouTube and PBS quickly turned into a local PBS show which was later syndicated to other PBS stations around the region. Now, her show was on PBS in over 20 cities. Catalina had now drawn interest, though no signed deals, from the Cooking Channel, Food Network, TLC, Netflix, and the Travel Channel. She had many sponsors and had just launched her 5th cookbook, which actually made its way onto the New York Times bestseller list. At the moment, she was very hot, and her star was rising. Unfortunately, the price to pay for that was her marriage, or at least the closeness that she and her husband had shared up until then. For the moment, all of her attention was on her persona and celebrity. Her fashion sense was regaled from her casual cooking attire with just a hint of cleavage to her opening night appearances at the Pittsburgh Symphony or the opera. Each of her social media accounts had over 1 million followers. At every stop along the way, Hank had been right beside her, supporting and promoting her. In trying to break into the nationwide market, she hired a new agent from New York City, Sheila, who recommended a new producer/editor, Felicia. They had Catalina convinced that she was ready for the big time, where she would transition from a mid-6-figure payday deep into the 7-digit range. Lately, her Instagram and Twitter pages were less and less about a recipe, product endorsement, or kitchen improvement suggestion, and more about her. For years ago, she only appeared in about 20% of her online pictures, which were usually pictures of something she cooked or a kitchen she had remodeled. Now she appeared in almost 80%. Hank guessed that was because of the new additions to her team. When Hank told Catalina that, unlike the previous year, he wasn't going with her to the 4-week shoot in Spain, her second such trip, she was stunned. After she informed Scott and Tina, they were concerned. By then, Hank was in Asia, so they mostly shared texts with him regarding the surprise. This was to be the first week of actual shooting in Spain.
Hank was wondering about this call. Scott asked, "Are your bags packed? Tina and I are sending you a first-class ticket to Barcelona." She's on speaker, by the way.
Hey, Tina.
Hey, Scott.
The Queen has not been amused this week. She was in full pissed-off mode this morning.
This week has been a real struggle.
You weren't here to do a pre-check before she arrived on site.
There are a few things behind schedule.
Without you here to calm her down, I keep telling Scott that we should quit. Our pocketbook cannot afford that, but we say that you definitely owe us dinner and all the beer or wine we can drink when we get back.
Done, and don't bother with the ticket. I'm not coming, and she knows it. I'm done with Queen Catalina.
If I cannot have my regular cat back that liked her barn in PBS, I don't want this new person. She can stay in Spain for all I care. Maybe her mother can come to your filming location and rein her in.
Scott said,
"Oh, Marlies has been here. She's not happy with her daughter, Sheila, nor Felicia. I think she preferred the old cat, too."
Hank asked, "Are you guys taking a lunch break?"
Not with her. The contractors have a lot of work to finish, so she's gone to her mother's apartment.
Tina and I will stay to film some of their work, and Tina will plan some of the early shots for next week.
We hope to be cooking by the end of next week, or we'll really be behind. It's a good crew, but clearly, they haven't watched enough of the shows in the US where they try to do a complete remodel in a week. We've given them 2 full weeks, but they are still struggling. Hank chuckled, "Sounds like I made a good decision to stay."
Tina asked, "Hank, do you mean it regarding her staying in Spain? We've known the two of you for a long time. This last year has been particularly tough. Are you guys going to be okay?"
"I don't know. I'm mentally preparing myself for the fact that we probably won't. I don't know if she's shared this with you two or not, but we are officially separated."
"I've not told Eva nor Eric. If she's told them, they haven't mentioned it to me, so I'm assuming she hasn't said anything. The two of you are the only 2 people I've told."
"I'm working from Asheville while she's gone, but you don't have to tell her that."
"Separated? Damn," exclaimed Scott. "But I completely get it.
I would imagine that living with her has been difficult the past year. Tina told me that if I did to her what Kat allowed to happen to you, that she would cut my balls off and hang them in her car like dice."
"Yeah.
That wasn't the start, but that was the spotlight being thrown on our marriage, and every problem we had seen to have been highlighted. I've tried to talk to her, but she thinks I'm being unreasonable. I just think that now with the kids out of the house, we both want different things in life.
I don't know if we'll ever get on the same page again."
Even though there is no legal separation in Pennsylvania, I've let her know that we are officially separated, and if I spend any time in that house, it will be in the guest bedroom in her barn.
"I'm completely out." There was silence on the phone while everyone digested that information. Tina said, "I'm sorry, Scott. I feel like we created a monster." "No. You are the best friends anyone could have.
She's the one that thinks she can party with all the cool kids, while we graciously accept her scraps.
Sorry, not going to happen.
I hope that when you get back, you'll think about starting a family. You've mentioned it to me before, so I hope the time is getting close."
Scott replied, "We've been thinking about it.
Both of us have quietly talked to a few people in Pittsburgh about positions. We hate to leave Kat, but this week sometimes makes me wonder if she is going to move to New York and get rid of us.
Hell, she may even move here, to Barcelona. We've had to hire someone to keep fans from wandering onto the site."
"I'm not surprised."
"Well, good for her. If that's the life she wants, she can have it."
"She may find that all that glitters isn't gold, and should she stumble, none of us will be there to catch her."
"I'm sorry, Hank. You've been a good husband and a great friend. Let us know if we can do anything for you." "Thank you. I appreciate your calling."
"Truly.
Any time." As Hank walked into the building, he was sorely reminded why he was working from Asheville.
Thank God for the food bank and those 2 girls to distract him from his real life. He dreaded the thought of living in Pittsburgh if Kat was going to be there. Then again, even if she became a celebrity and moved to New York, it could still suck being the former Mr. Catalina Nieves.
He could just hear the guys saying, "You walked away from that?"
Yep. Any self-respecting man would. That afternoon, before the girls arrived at the food bank, he decided to bite the bullet and
call Kat. It was 8 p.m. in Barcelona, so not too late.
It would be the first time that he tried to call her in several weeks. She called him while he was in Singapore, to try to get him to change his mind and meet her in Barcelona. He didn't budge, which pissed her off royally. She used the phrase, "insolent child." He wondered what he would get today. Her phone rang and rang, but she never picked up. He left her a voicemail, "I just wanted to see how you're doing. Call me back if you have a minute." He wondered if she were visiting her mother who lived there in Barcelona. He had always liked Merlis Nieves. She was a sweet, though occasionally spicy lady and had been good to him. He pulled up his Find My Friends app to see if she was at her mother's nice apartment. She wasn't. She was in downtown Barcelona in the shopping district. Oh well. The girls were happy with their drinks and thanked him again for taking them fishing. Morgan thought that one more fishing trip and they would have enough for a big fish fry. He was looking forward to that. When he woke the next morning, he had a text from Kat saying, "Sorry I missed you, Sheila and I were shopping for things we need for the show." He suspected that she wasn't really sorry to have missed him. He sighed. This is what he suspected. He had forced her to choose, and it looks like she'd chosen. Early the following week, while working at the food bank and thinking about his upcoming evening, he thought it was time to at least meet the girl's mother. He asked, "How would all of you like to dine at your mother's restaurant tonight?" My treat. This surprised all of them, because they had been there many times, but had never eaten anything more than a dessert there. Morgan said, "Hank, are you sure? I'm guessing that you can afford it, but it's kind of a posh place. I don't want to put you out. I appreciate your concern, but don't worry about that. Besides, I'd like for Amber and Bella's mom to see that I'm not an axe murderer." At the mention of his meeting their mom, both Amber and Bella peeked up from their devices. Morgan said, "Oh, don't worry about that. I don't think she's quite figured you out yet, but she knows who you are. You'd be surprised by what's available on the internet, Mr. Henry Reed, CFO, CMA, CPA, and MBA of Pittsburgh." Hank nodded. "I hope you don't think I was trying to hide anything." "Nope. I don't think that at all. I've appreciated your help and your company's donations around here over the years, and my family appreciates the things you've done for the girls. For the moment, your story doesn't need to be told, though I hope one day you will tell us. I appreciate that, and I will. I'll know more in a few weeks." Bella asked, "What do all those letters mean?" Morgan said, "It means he's important." Hank scoffed, "No. It only means that I went to school for a long time and passed a bunch of exams." Morgan, "Don't make it out to mean more than it does. All of that is related to what I do. It's not who I am. I think people often confuse what they do with who they are. I work to provide for my family. That's all. Well, the work you do here is appreciated by a lot of families. I hope you'll continue. Thanks. My company likes supporting this organization, and I like doing it, too." That evening, Hank was outside of Malta, one of Asheville's newer and finer restaurants. He had investigated it several times since meeting the girls and was anticipating an enjoyable dinner. It was in an old downtown Asheville building, but instead of redecorating rustically, it was decorated brightly with lofty ceilings, bright colors, and plenty of whites, blues, and Maltese tiles adorning portions of the walls. As the name implies, the restaurant serves Mediterranean fare. With Malta being smack in the middle of the Med, the restaurant used that to serve offerings from each country that touched the Med, and a small portion of its menu rotated each month to feature a different country. This month's featured country was Greece. When Morgan and Bill arrived with the girls, they were all dressed for the occasion. Bill had on jeans with a sport coat. Hank was wearing a blazer over his khakis. The ladies were all wearing nice dresses, and Morgan had styled the girls' hair. Once seated, the girls were squirming from their excitement, and it took a while for them to calm down.
Bella told the waitress, "Our mama works here." Hank expected that would bring her out soon, and it did. It was easy to spot her as she approached.
There couldn't be that many cooks, nor chefs, wearing a toque approaching their table, and he could spot some of the girl's features on her face. She wasn't a raving beauty, but she was attractive, even if she was wearing a chef's uniform which hid everything. As she got closer, Hank stood, followed by Bill, who had been poked by Morgan to stand also.
Julia smiled as she approached, seeing both men standing for her. "Hi. I'm Julia. You must be Hank. I'm pleased to meet you." "The pleasure is mine, Julia. Thank you for bringing everyone. I think this is the first time they've all eaten here together." "Happy to do it. I just wanted you to see me since I'm spending so much time around your family. This seemed like a good opportunity for that." "I'm glad you did. I know the girls have really enjoyed this summer, and Aunt Morgan has appreciated your help at the food bank. Being there and around them has been good for me, too." She paused just a second to digest that phrase. They chatted for a few minutes, and even though it was early on a Wednesday evening, the restaurant was beginning to fill, and Julia needed to get back to the kitchen. Before she left, Hank took a picture of her with her family. Morgan said, "Send that to me, please." He did. With his mission accomplished, Hank sat back and enjoyed his dinner. Everyone seemed to have a pleasant time, and the food was marvelous. Before they left, Julia came back out and thanked them for coming, kissed her girls, and thanked Hank for treating them. She shook his hand before they turned to leave. Hank could see the girls looking over their shoulders, grinning at their mother as Morgan shepherded them out. Chapter 2. Later that week, Hank took an afternoon to take Morgan and the girls to a water park. Morgan stayed under an umbrella wearing her hat and shades and monitored their belongings. Hank rode all the rides with the girls, and they were thoroughly soaked early and often. The girls had an exciting time and fell asleep in the SUV on the way back to the food bank, where he helped get them into Morgan's car, and she drove them home. On the drive back, Morgan and Hank had made plans for another fishing excursion the next week and for a fish fry the following Sunday, a night when Julia wasn't planning on working. The only text Hank received recently from Barcelona was from Merle's, Kat's mom. All it said was, "You are missed. I wish you were here." He texted, "Miss you, too. It isn't just me that misses you, but she'll never admit it. That's why I'm not there. Love you." She gave him a sad emoji and texted, "Love you too. Come visit me, no matter what." He replied, "Will do. You're always welcome here with me. You can stay for as long as you want." He chuckled when the 69-year-old woman sent him a smiley emoji and replied, "Careful, I may take you up on that." That night he called his son Eric, who was still in college. Eric knew that Hank had been busy traveling, and he had been busy studying. They talked for a few minutes about how things were in Pittsburgh and Asheville. Hank was about to hang up when Eric asked, "Dad, have you heard from Mom?" "She hasn't called me. I was wondering if you knew how her shoot in Spain was going. I tried to call her, but she didn't pick up. She sent me a text apologizing. I talked to Tina and Scott for a few minutes last week. They were very busy with the filming. She hardly has time for us anymore. Do you think we did something wrong to drive her away?" Hank shook his head. "No. I don't. She's so focused on trying to become a food celebrity that she's not bothered to look over her shoulder at her family recently. At least, that's what I think. I had hoped my not going with her to Spain would be a wake-up. Clearly, it wasn't. It surprised me and Eva. It worries us, too. Have you tried to call her?" "Once. Like you. No reply except for a text. You may want to try again, but I wouldn't lose any sleep over it if I were you. She knows that she has a family that loves her. We cannot make her want to spend time with us." Eric replied, "I feel the same way. Love you, son." "We love you too, Dad." Hank shook his head after he hung up the phone. Even if she didn't wind up all alone, he wondered if Kat would recognize what she gave up in the process. Would she even care?
Fishing was on the following Tuesday, and while they didn't catch as many as on the previous trip, they had a lot of fun.
Once again, Hank ordered food to be delivered to them. This time the girls wanted pizza.
With the fish not biting as often, the girls were more interested in the pizza than the fish. Later, Morgan and Julia came to pick up the girls. She shook Scott's hand and told him to come hungry for the fish fry that was planned for Sunday night. It was the first time he had seen Julia's hair and in normal clothes. It affirmed what he had suspected, which was that she was an attractive woman. Few people would think she was as attractive as the brunette bombshell Catalina, but her shoulder-length mahogany hair was very pretty, and her green eyes sparkled. She didn't show a lot of teeth when she smiled, but it was a lovely smile that could charm her girls when she did. It had a nice effect on Hank, too. He asked, "Julia, since it seems like you aren't working this Sunday, would you be interested in taking the girls for a short hike that morning?" He could see her thinking rough the request, and replied, "I think they would like that. Why don't you come over early and eat breakfast with us and we'll leave afterwards?" Sounds good. Hank talked to Eva, his daughter, during the week, and their conversation was similar to that with his son. She was busy with her job and for the last year had been enjoying the independence of earning her own way. She was planning on spending Labor Day with him, whether that was in Pittsburgh or Asheville. That pleased him considerably. He told her to plan on Asheville. Late Saturday afternoon, he received another Skype request from Scott and Tina.
Hank answered, "Hey, how's it going? Did you start cooking on time?"
It was Scott. "We did, but it has been a struggle the entire time.
Not much sleep this week."
Leading up to these 4 weeks of shooting, every single shoot that we had planned revolved around her shopping at specific markets or cooking in this new kitchen. Everything was all planned out. Felicia is pushing for some shots of her shopping at several unplanned kitchen stores, fashion stores, and on the beach.
We aren't even geared up for that. We don't have the right equipment. It's going to take time that we don't have to prepare.
I don't even know if I can find a gimbal for our cameras to create the steady walking shots they want. The Queen's response to all of this was, "Figure it out and get it done."
She isn't going to like the bill for this. Hank laughed, "Hey, I've seen your contract with her. She's required to cover your expenses.
I'd just go get or order what you need and not worry about it."
"I know. It's just frustrating.
If you were here, you could help talk her out of some of these things. Or worst case scenario, you could go to the beach to help scout a place to shoot and give me a heads up on how to plan for it."
That would save me the time to have to do it.
Sorry, Scott.
She's not listening to me anymore either. She won't even answer my calls.
Tina said, "Speaking of that, there's something we need to talk about with you.
We don't want to burden you, but we think you need to know."
Oh.
What's going on?
Tina continued, "Some soccer asshole has been coming by every day this week. He's from the local soccer team, so he's a big deal around here. It's probably hard for you to imagine, but that team is likely as popular as the Steelers and Penguins combined.
Kat said having him on the show could help her in Barcelona.
She and the guy are flirting.
Nothing shameless, yet. Scott and I are not happy.
Each of us is biting our tongue, but we're worried. I don't know if you've been following her social media posts, but it appears that she met him and half the FC Barcelona soccer team while out clubbing last weekend with Felicia and Sheila.
She posted about it. No. I've been intentionally not watching what she's doing.
The only thing I want from her is an apology and for her to come home. Since it doesn't look like either of those is happening soon, I'm focused on what is going on here."
"That's probably smart," Tina replied.
"I told her this separation would turn into a divorce in an instant if she uses it as an excuse to sample someone else."
Scott said, "We understand. Her mom's been here every day. Felicia and Sheila clearly don't like that, but they are at least smart enough to keep their mouths shut." Ha! It's funny.
Kat and the soccer guy speak platonically in English when her mother is around but speak in Spanish when she's not.
I guess she doesn't realize that Tina can understand them. Trust me, the conversations are much flirtier in Spanish. Thank God for Merlis.
though I shouldn't have to rely on my mother-in-law to save my marriage.
No. I think we are just about done.
We're sorry to bring you sad news, Hank, but we thought you should know.
You're great friends and are appreciated. If I can ever do anything for you, just let me know. Well, if we quit, we may have to take you up on that for a month or so. You're always welcome wherever I am. Thanks, Hank.
Take care of yourself.
You too.
Hank pondered that conversation for a few minutes and decided to go for a run to burn some calories and frustration. He shook his head in bewilderment, though he wouldn't allow himself to feel surprised that it came to this.
Disappointed?
Yes.
Surprised? No.
Once out of the house and onto the road, he still remembered the conversation he had with Kat as if it had just occurred. Of course, this was probably the 10th time he would replay it in his mind. He hoped it would be his last replay, though it probably wouldn't.
8 weeks ago.
Catalina had been spending more and more time in New York at the request of Sheila, her agent.
He couldn't blame her because that was where many of the network executives worked.
Kat and Sheila had been trying for months to get into their offices to try and persuade them to give Kat a show of her own. It truly seemed like she was on the verge of getting a deal with one of the main cable networks for that type of programming, but she was gone a lot. Also, she never apologized for embarrassing him a year ago during and after their last 4-week shoot in Madrid, Spain. Similar to this year, they had found an apartment that needed renovating. He and Kat worked with Sheila and Felicia to have the place scoped out and prepped for renovating during the first 2 weeks and then for the cooking show that would be filmed in the final 2 weeks. They developed 16 episodes out of 4 weeks of shooting. It was their 4th time doing something like that, their first time overseas, and the first time with Sheila and Felicia. She and Hank flew in a few days early, hoping to relax and do a little sightseeing. When they checked on the apartment, it was not ready for a TV production to take place. Kat and Hank began making calls and doing what they could to ensure that by the time Scott and Tina arrived, along with the local contractors, they would be ready. When everyone showed up on the first day of shooting, there were still a lot of questions.
Hank, trying to help, was often working with the contractors alongside Kat.
Unfortunately, Hank's Spanish was barely passable, so he had to repeat himself or the contractors would have to repeat themselves frequently. Sheila or Felicia had the episodes edited in such a way that for the first 6 episodes, it made Hank look like he was nearly clueless. Scott and Tina were not editing those episodes, like they did in the past, and had no idea Hank was about to be blindsided. By the end of the 6th episode airing on TV, Hank was furious. People at Hank's work were stunned because they all knew him to be exceptionally bright. He was 3rd in command over a $3.5 billion global company. Several of the sponsors were surprised also because they had known Kat and Hank for years. The show looked incredibly good. The apartment and especially the kitchen turned out great. The cooking shows and visits to the local markets were colorful, entertaining, and well received. Nobody could understand why Hank was made to be the punchline for the first several episodes.
Hank and Kat had a big blow-up over it.
She said Felicia and Sheila were just trying to add some comedy to the show.
Followed by, everyone that knows you understands that you aren't really like that. It's reality television. Everyone knows it's scripted and that you were just acting. He growled back at his wife, "Do you know how many phone calls I've received from family, friends, or co-workers that have asked me if you and I are getting a divorce? That is the only thing in their minds that makes sense of how I was portrayed. Other than having an affair, they struggle to think of a reason why you would hate me so much. I'm not making that up. It's what people are asking me." Oh, lighten up, Francis.
Nobody believes that. They all know how much I love you.
I guess they do.
Your show proved that to them on the first 6 episodes. That gave her pause. She said, "I keep telling you that everyone knows that reality television isn't real. They'll forget about it in no time. The last several episodes were some of my best. They rated very highly and are attracting national attention."
Hank said, "I thought I knew you, Kat. I trusted you to protect me as I would protect you.
While it may not have been intentional, it's clear that I don't rate high enough for you to defend. I swear to God if I thought you were intentionally trying to hurt me, I'd file for divorce right now." Rather than shocked, she looked irritated at that statement.
"You've got to be kidding me.
We've spent 13 years slowly, grindingly, building this career, together, and at the first sign that someone giggles over something you did, you're threatening to walk out on me?"
Fine, go ahead.
"You make a nice salary, but I make as much as you do now, so it won't be me that's losing out."
Kat, I love you. I've loved you for the last 26 years.
But I'm going to leave the house for a few days because otherwise, we might say things that we cannot take back. But you can write this down: until I get a meaningful apology from you, don't count on me to help your career anymore.
Kat was hot. Who did he think he was, insinuating that she couldn't make it without him?
She didn't need his help and was about to tell him so when she thought better of it. She had opened her mouth to speak, but the venom she saw in her husband's eyes surprised her. It was the first time she had ever seen that look coming from him. So, instead, she stopped and let him leave. She thought it would do them both some good to calm down. She knew that with the help of Sheila and Felicia, she would get her national show sooner rather than later.
Hank would see that it was worth it. Kat was gone a lot more and was worn out most of the time.
Her schedule was crazy busy, either filming shows in her barn studio, meeting with existing or new sponsors, or traveling to New York to chat
with network executives. Hank barely saw her.
When he tried to ask her if things would slow down anytime soon, she could only promise that things would get better. She said, "Once I get to the top of the mountain, then it will be all downhill."
"I'm almost to the top, sweetie. Just bear with me a little longer." He would try.
With her gone so much, it no longer bothered him if he needed to travel. On the few nights when she was home, she complained that he wasn't there for her.
Her self-centeredness was getting worse.
8 weeks ago, which was almost 9 months after the confrontation that birthed their big blow-up, Hank still didn't have his apology, and their relationship hadn't improved. They did their best to try to avoid the elephant in the room, but it never really went away. In Hank's mind, they no longer had a real marriage. She couldn't be brought to care about what was going on, nor did she seem to care how what she did was also impacting Hank and their families' lives. Their kids were missing her, too. She and Hank no longer talked about their work. They barely talked about their children. While the kids tried to stay caught up with their mother, they knew that if they really needed anything important, it was their father that would actually help them. So, Hank would try one final time to get Kat to come around.
He didn't hold out much hope.
He made plans to travel to their plant in Hendersonville, North Carolina, near Asheville, for a week, and then to Australia and Singapore for 3 weeks on business, so that he would be gone well in advance of her leaving to start filming in Spain. If she changed her attitude and offered him an apology, he could still cancel his plans and go with her, but he expected he would still be going to Asia. It was a Sunday morning after the two of them had attended a Pirates game the night before in a luxury suite hosted by one of her sponsors that he confronted her. He said, "Kat, I need to talk to you for a few minutes."
"It's important."
She sipped her coffee and raised her eyebrows like she expected him to continue while she looked at her phone.
"Can you put the phone down, please?"
She sighed and said sarcastically, "I'm all yours."
He said, "I'm not going with you to Spain." That had her attention. "What? Why not? Can you not get off for all 4 weeks? You have plenty of vacation. Why can't you get away?" "It isn't the vacation, nor the work. I simply don't want to go." "I'm repeating myself, but why not?"
"I never got the apology from you for what happened last year, and I won't be made to look like a fool a second time."
She huffed out, "Oh, you've got to be kidding me. We talked about that. It was nothing. It was something to me. Even Robert, the CEO,
asked me a few months ago if I was going this year. He advised me that if I decided to go, I should ensure that the episodes didn't portray an executive at the company in such a poor light."
"No way. Don't tell me that he doesn't understand reality TV either."
She was shaking her head.
"What is it with you people? Besides, why does it matter if other people don't understand that it isn't real? It doesn't impact your job."
It was his turn to shake his head.
"Do you have any idea what I do, Kat? Do you understand the scope of what I'm responsible for? Ever heard of SOX or Sarbanes-Oxley?
That means that I, the CFO, and Robert, the CEO, have to personally sign off on our company's financial statements.
We can be put in jail for filing fraudulent or even erroneous statements.
So you can imagine that neither he nor our shareholders like seeing the man responsible for the financial management of our company being portrayed as a fool on your show.
You may not have meant to, but you hurt me personally and professionally. I won't allow that to happen again.
I have to protect myself, even if my wife won't.
She replied, I can't believe this. You are supposed to be part of the cast. How are we going to replace you on such short notice?
I'm sure you'll manage. This is why I'm giving you a month's heads up and not springing it on you at the last minute like you sprung those episodes on me last year.
She was finally beginning to see that he really was hurt. She would have to think about that.
Still, he was taking a chance on hurting her show.
How could he do that? I can't believe it. All these years we worked on my shows together, and you're just walking away? That isn't all, Kat.
He pulled an envelope from his messenger bag which he had in the living room where he worked some the previous night when he couldn't sleep. In this envelope are copies of some papers that my lawyer is holding for me. In Pennsylvania, unless both parties want the divorce, we have to be separated for 12 months before I can file papers for a contested divorce.
Our separation date starts today.
If we aren't working to fix our problems by the time we hit 12 months, I'm going to file. If you don't want to wait that long and we can agree to a consensual divorce, then we can file sooner.
You should have an attorney look at these for you.
They are very fair and don't touch your business at all.
Are you shitting me? After 26 years, you're just going to walk out and not try to fix our marriage?
No. I want to fix our marriage. I've been trying to get you to engage with me for the last 10 months for you to realize that it needs fixing.
You still don't seem to think anything is wrong. Honestly, Kat, I think we just want different things out of our life going forward.
That's not true. I want you and I to keep working together on our marriage and my career. How are we going to work on those if you don't come with me to Spain?
How will there be anything left if you allow Sheila and Felicia to make a fool of me, again?
He could see her jaw tensing over that statement. He guessed she would never see his reality, only her own.
He continued, we aren't a couple anymore.
We're barely friends with benefits. What was a joint effort on our part has become your solo act. I don't begrudge you for that, because it is your career, not mine. I don't expect you to provide daily guidance on my job either. No, it's that our entire lives are consumed by your career. The publicity, the social media, now with a lot more travel. How many nights have we even been in the same house together in the last 6 months? We rarely talk, and when we do, you're usually distracted because someone or something is demanding more of your time. Like now you are just itching to pick up your phone rather than talking to me. She said, you could quit your job and come with me. We could work together all the time. I make as much as you make now. When I get my national show, we won't need your salary. Even if I don't get my own show, we'll still be fine, especially when you start cashing in all of your options in a few years. We're socking away money at an incredible pace, and we could both retire in a few years if we wanted to.
Except we both know that you don't or won't want to. Honey, I'm in demand right now.
I don't expect it to last forever, so I'm trying to maximize what I can while my face and body are still decent.
I'd love for us to do this together. Kat, up until the last year, we have been doing this together.
You've had your entire family, all your friends, plus Tina and Scott supporting you. But somewhere in the last 12 to 18 months, something has changed. I suspect it is Sheila and Felicia, but maybe it's you. I loved working with you while you built your cachet around here. I support you trying to go national, but I cannot get behind how it's being done. I'm leaving in a few minutes to go to North Carolina for a week at our factory there. Then I'm going to Australia and Singapore for 3 weeks. Then you are going to be in Spain for 4. That will give us 2 months apart. I hope you'll miss me while I'm gone, and when you get back, we can work on trying to get our marriage back on track. Defiantly she asked, what if I discover that while we are apart, I no longer need you?
Don't you think you are taking a chance that is what will happen? Actually, I'm fairly confident that you already feel that way.
I was hoping that this conversation and those papers will convince you that I'm serious about this and want us to find our way back.
I love you and want us to be together, but it has to be as equal partners on a team. We aren't even close to that right now.
Oh, and one more thing, we are still married. You don't have permission to cheat on me while we are trying to work things out.
If I find out that you have, then we are officially through. That got her riled up.
I have never, ever cheated on you, and I've had plenty of opportunities.
Should I congratulate you for doing the right thing? Or are you saying that it will eventually happen?
Oh, who?
You can be so frustrating sometimes. No. I don't want to cheat on you, but you have been making me so angry. Why can't you be a little more accommodating with my career?
He just looked at her while thinking of the last 13 years working together.
How obtuse could she be?
Shaking his head, Hank stood from the table and walked to the guest bedroom. He had no problem packing everything he needed over the last several days because she was gone from the house so much that she never noticed the 2 bags packed and in the guest closet. She followed him and watched him get ready to leave.
It only took a few minutes.
As he prepared to walk out the door the last time, she said, "I do love you, Henry."
I love you too, Catalina.
I really want us to fix our marriage. As he drove away, he said to himself, "I just wish you loved me a little more than your career." As she watched him drive away, she knew he would be back. She wasn't really worried about the divorce papers. He'd never leave her. She was even more stunned that he was planning on not going to Spain, but she was certain would be waiting for her when she returned. In the next second, she was thinking about how she was going to structure the shoot without him as part of the cast.
Back in the present.
Now, after speaking with Scott and Tina, and not having heard from her in 4 weeks, he assumed that when she came home, they would decide to go their separate ways.
Or not. Hell, he didn't know.
He would probably try one more time to convince her that they should fix their marriage.
That is, unless she does something really stupid. Then again, maybe he was the stupid one.
He didn't think so, but he could be wrong.
He hated the waiting.
After over 2.5 decades, she deserved a couple of more weeks until she left Spain. He felt terrible for not wanting to think about his wife and their marriage. Then when he did think about it, he felt nothing but anguish. At that moment he understood how people could lose themselves in a bottle. He was glad that he had chosen to lose himself in several miles of running. When he got home, he checked Kat's social media accounts for the first time in a while. There were pictures of her on set, with Sheila, shopping at various stores and markets, a few pictures with tourist sites in the background, one of her in Merle's, and then came the clubs. Those pictures angered him. Her dress was showing too much of her overabundance of cleavage and was definitely too short. It was the kind of dress someone in their 20s would wear, not someone that was in their late 40s. Oh sure, she could pull it off and look damn good doing it. But she was married and was wearing that dress while being surrounded by half the FC Barcelona soccer team. Her caption said, "My mom, who lives nearby, will be so jealous." He was sorely tempted to forward it to Merle's and ask, "Jealous yet?" But he didn't want Kat to know he was checking up on her. He also didn't think it Merle's responsibility to save their marriage. He was fairly certain that Kat no longer wanted it saved. But he wanted it saved, damn it. At least he would be able to look in the mirror every day and say that he tried, even if she didn't. So, he typed "jealous yet" and hit send, and wondered if he would get a reply. The next morning, he saw Merle's reply. It said, "Not jealous. Furious. She and I are not happy with each other." Chapter 3. Hank drove to Morgan and Bill's place for breakfast, and it was special. Julia and Morgan had gone all out preparing a big spread for everyone. Hank knew how nice it was to be married to someone who didn't mind putting forth effort in the kitchen. He thanked her and Morgan profusely for their efforts. Morgan made them some sandwiches and had some chips and granola for them to take with them. Hank put them in his backpack that would carry all their things for their short hike. They loaded the girls in his SUV and drove to the parking area for the Black Balsam Knob hike, just off the Blue Ridge Parkway southwest of Asheville. At 1.5 miles round trip, it is a very short hike, but with Bella being only 8 years old, he didn't want something that was so taxing that she lost interest. It is a wonderful hike once past the initial stand of large fir trees and opens into a long, open path through a meadow along a ridgeline towards the bald summit.
At 6,200 feet, the rise was only 300 feet in elevation during the hike. Currently, in the height of summer, the path was surrounded by wildflowers, wild blueberries, and blackberries. Mixed among the craggy rocks were bunches of blooming rhododendron and mountain laurel. The honeybees and bumblebees were merrily working their way from flower to flower. Whereas many other hikes in the Smokies could be quite strenuous, this was merely a spirited stroll along one of the most beautiful paths in the mountains. At the rocky summit, they could see for miles and miles as they sat on the rocky top and ate their sandwiches and snacks. On the way up, the girls stopped frequently inspecting every little thing, stretching out the length of time it took to arrive at the top. They took many pictures along the way, including all the ladies together on top. On the way down, they were very content at a relaxed pace, with fewer stops. Many people they met coming up the path smiled at them and said hello. And why not? The four of them looked like a normal family. Julia noticed that too. Julia's breath was almost taken away when she saw Bella reach over and take Hank's hand for a portion of the way down. It nearly brought tears to her eyes, but it also made her realize that while she appreciated what Hank had done for her girls, she might need to put some limits on things for now if he wasn't going to be around for much longer. Still, for just a moment, she caught herself wishing that he wasn't married. The girls were happily chattering away on the drive back. Even though they hadn't exerted themselves very much, Hank had expected them to sleep in the back seat. They didn't. Julia was quiet though, having to be brought into the conversation rather than initiating discussion herself. They arrived back at Morgan and Bill's mid-afternoon, and Julia told him to be there at 6 o'clock. While Hank wasn't certain what to make of Julia's behavior, he could tell that the girls had an enjoyable time. At least there was that. Later that afternoon, Hank returned with a cooler full of beer and a couple of bottles of chilled wine. He even brought a decent bottle of Macallan's single malt scotch to share amongst anyone that wanted a sample. When he arrived, there were over a dozen cars parked along the long driveway leading to the house. He could see kids running around and adults standing around talking. A few wafts of smoke could be seen floating from the backyard. Bill saw him and waved for him to come back. He was introduced to a bunch of their friends and neighbors. One of the women even worked at the same factory where Hank had been working. He was eventually introduced to Bill and Morgan's kids and spouses who drove up for the occasion. Bill's grandkids were running around with Amber and Bella. Overall, he was made to feel quite welcome. When Bella and Amber stopped mid-run to give him a hug, everyone within eyesight noticed. Eventually, it was announced that dinner was served with a big spread of food from fried catfish, crappie, and shrimp to baked pecan-encrusted catfish. Several different salads and slaws were prepared along with a succotash made of lima beans from Bill's garden, served beside the heirloom tomatoes that he grew. There were plenty of other sides including hush puppies and jalapeno cornbread. There was another table nearby packed with desserts. Hank was always with Bill or Morgan sharing a chat about Pittsburgh or what was going on in the Asheville area. When dinner and dessert were finished, Hank went inside to help wash dishes, which was a normal thing for him. If someone is gracious enough to cook, then the least he could do was to help clean up. Morgan let him help for about 15 minutes before she had Bill pull him back outside. Bill said, "You're going to make the rest of us guys look bad." He was only half joking. As the sun dropped down low in the sky, some of the adults were watching the Atlanta Braves game inside, some were out back pitching horseshoes, but most were just chatting. The kids were still running around, and Bill had Hank engaged in a conversation with a few of his neighbors. Julia approached holding 3 beers and proceeded to bump her hip into Hank's, then she handed Bill and Hank a beer and asked Hank if he would join her for a moment. She had a couple of lawn chairs sitting underneath an oak tree where they could watch the backyard without being mixed into all the activities. After they had been seated for a moment, Hank said, "Thank you for the beer and cooking. I don't know how much you cooked, but everything I ate was very good." "Thank you. I had a lot of help and truly it was Aunt Morgan that planned and did most everything. I only cooked 3 things. Hank chuckled at that. Only 3 things. Ha! But I've seen it done before, so I have some idea how you do it. She said, I wanted to thank you for this afternoon. As much as I enjoyed the hike, what I think I enjoyed the most was seeing how relaxed and happy Amber and Bella were. They are happy. This is the best summer they've had in a long, long time. I'm glad. They're great girls. She girded herself for the next part of the conversation. Can I ask you a personal question? Sure. Why such an interest in the girls? I know you're not a stalker nor a child molester. It was pretty easy to check up on who you are. Which surprised the hell out of me. You look a lot different without the goatee you had on your wife's show. He chuckled at that. Aunt Morgan and I both appreciate what you've done for the girls, but why? It's not like they were huddled under a bridge or had raggedy clothes. What made you want to do something for them? He took a few moments to collect his thoughts and replied, honestly? I've seen them off and on over the last few years, during the times I was able to help out at the food bank. My first week here this summer, I was about to unload a truck, and when I took the paperwork to Morgan, I saw Amber and Bella reading in her office. Bella, as I'm sure you know, is very talkative. So she asked if she could talk to me while I unloaded the truck. Morgan gave permission, and we chatted while I unloaded. She seemed happy to talk, so I let her. She told me about what they were doing this summer, how they stayed with Morgan while you worked, and how you were a great chef at a local restaurant. She really looks up to you. I remember Eva, my daughter, when she was around their age having such fun at summer day camps. When I asked Bella about camps around here, she told me about some that her friends attended. I asked her if she ever went, and she said no. I asked her if she would like to, and she said yes. After that, it was pretty easy to see if any scholarships were available for a couple of deserving girls. You've raised some sweet girls, so I thought I would try to help out. I know that you are busy, and I thought that I would try to give them some attention. I'm sorry if I overstepped some boundaries. She laughed. Yes, I suppose you overstepped several, but I thank you. Summers are usually very boring for them. This one has been great so far. Can I ask you another question? Of course. Did you have something to do with the summer camp scholarships and laptop and iPad? He shrugged his shoulders and said, maybe just a little. She laughed while stating, you're incorrigible, aren't you? When it comes to trying to help, I try to err on the side of asking forgiveness rather than permission. I really was just trying to do something nice for the girls, and, he shrugged again, it's hard to say no to either of them. He was wondering how hard it would be to say no to Julia, then he admonished himself for that thought. He was still married, mostly. Julia responded, since you were getting involved in their lives, I looked into you. It wasn't too difficult once I typed in your company name and CFO to get quite a bit. As I mentioned, I was surprised. I like your wife's show. She isn't on the PBS channels around here, but we've seen what the two of you have done on YouTube and her website. I'm surprised my daughters haven't recognized you yet. When you told Bill your wife was traveling, does that mean she's away filming? She is. She's in Barcelona, Spain, now, filming a bunch of episodes. I always participated, until this year. She allowed me to be portrayed in a poor light during several episodes last year. I've tried to convince her to see that those episodes, and by extension, she, hurt me. She doesn't see it that way. I didn't want to risk my job with whatever she might have planned this year, so I traveled some for work and have been working from our factory here. Even though I've tried, we've not spoken since she left for Spain. I'm sorry. It's okay. I'm not happy about it, but I've been trying for the past year to get her to work with me to repair our marriage. That's not something I can do by myself. They both sipped from their bottles and watched the activity in the backyard. He asked, may I ask you a question? She smiled in reply and said, go for it. The girl's father? I'm guessing that at one time there was a Mr. LeBlanc. There was. He was from Louisiana, and I met him in Charlotte where he worked for a pipeline company. He was transferred to New Orleans, closer to his home, which thrilled him, and it was a nice promotion and came with a sizable raise.
I went with him and attended Nochi, or New Orleans Culinary and Hospitality Institute. We got pregnant before I graduated, but I was close. We had Amber and was pregnant with Bella when he was badly injured out on an oil rig in the Gulf. He was not able to return to the oil rigs, so he was transferred back to Charlotte. The problem was that he became dependent on the pain medication that had been given to him to help during his recovery. Eventually, it got worse and worse. He stopped showing up at work, and I and his employer tried to get him into treatment. He was in and out of treatment for months. Eventually, he stopped seeking help. It was a terrible time at home. After Bella was born, I brought them here to live with Aunt Morgan and Uncle Bill. Apparently, Adam, my husband, got caught up in the medicine, and one day, after taking too many pills, tried to drive somewhere and died in a one-car accident. We didn't have a lot of money saved, and he had declined the insurance offered through his company to save money. That left us with a lot of debt. We've been living here ever since. Once the girls were in school, I started working as a cook. I've worked my way up into better positions and better restaurants to where I am now. I'm called a chef in my current job, but I've not finished my education. The restaurant, which is one of the better ones around here, is one of 2 that my employers own, and they just like saying they have chefs. He chuckled, well, everything I've tasted from your hand has been very good. Having lived with Catalina for so long, I like to think that my palate is more discriminating than most. Also, I'm sorry about your husband. That must have been terrible. Thanks. She paused a moment then asked, so, is your intention for you to just be Uncle Hank to the girls? Are you even planning on being around after the summer? If you are going to disappear, please don't get too close to them. I already worry a little about that. That's fair. Yes, I'm Mr. Hank, but Uncle Hank would be fine too. Honestly, I don't know what's going to happen. Kat has 2 more weeks in Spain, then possibly a week in New York, then back to Pittsburgh. I think. There is some concerning news about her activities in Spain when she's not filming. If she wants to work on our marriage after she is back, then we will. Honestly, I don't know if it can be saved. If she doesn't want to work on it, then I'll probably try to find a way to move here and work from the local factory. That's all I know at the moment. She said, thank you for sharing all of that. It helps. If you don't mind, let's keep it at Mr. Hank until you see what's going to happen. If you do end up spending more time here, then I'd be okay with your becoming Uncle Hank. I would like that too. If you need someone to talk to, just let me know. I know our schedules rarely align, but I could always meet you for, wait. I'm sorry. Meeting a married man for lunch sounds tawdry. Just come over here when I'm not working. Uncle Bill will likely be here, or you can call me in the mornings before I go to the restaurant. I have mine and the girl's reputation to consider, so I shouldn't give the appearance that I'm dating a married man. I completely understand and feel the same way. You're beautiful and talented, so I do not doubt that when someone sees you alone with a man, they could easily think you would be dating. I appreciate your lending an ear. Even though I'm going back to Pittsburgh for only a couple of days next week, I'll miss the girls while I'm gone. They've really helped me while I've been here. I'm glad. Thanks for caring for them. They've enjoyed the attention that you've given them. Oh, as far as dating. I don't have the time. He thought it interesting that she offered that unprovoked. He said, this coming week will be intriguing. The first episode from this filming in Spain will air on Thursday on the PBS stations that carry her. Oh. I wish I could see that. Anytime you want to, let me know. We have a computer at the house here that links directly with the server the videographer uses. He doesn't do the editing anymore, but it is the central repository for all the raw footage and the backup for all the past episodes. Basically, anything she has ever done is on there, including her new work. I can see why she's popular. She's beautiful and talented and a little spicy. Her energy comes through on camera. He said, I agree. It does. I'll put last season's episodes on a thumb drive and give them to Morgan tomorrow before I fly out.
Maybe one day that you aren't working, all of you can come over to watch the current episode. I'll even offer to cook for all of you, or worst case, we'll order in." She laughed. "Oh, no. You've offered to cook, and I'm accepting. You're on the hook now.
I want to see what you can do after having been married to Catalina for so long." He was chuckling too, and Morgan, who had been keeping an eye on the two of them, was pleased to see that. Now she was hoping for Hank to dump his wife. She knew she shouldn't feel that way, but she couldn't help it. Julia was a good mother, but very busy with her job and her hours stunk. Having Hank in the girl's life had been a blessing, and she wanted that to continue.
Hank felt pretty good when he left that night.
Julia was pleased to have gotten his interest in her girls sorted. She would at least admit to herself that he would be a nice catch, but she was serious about not dating married men.
However, should he become unmarried?
Hank dropped off the thumb drive with Morgan as promised and flew back to Pittsburgh. He had good meetings with Robert and later his direct reports. A major investor, a large pension fund, was in town and they needed to put on a good show. When Robert asked Hank when he planned to return to working from the Pittsburgh headquarters, Hank replied, "I wanted to talk to you about that." While COVID-19 was going on, we all proved that we could work successfully from home. "I'd like for you to think about my continuing to work from our factory in North Carolina. I'll come back here once a month or more if necessary. I've not made any plans yet, but Kat and I don't seem to be any better, and I like it there." Robert replied, "I'm sorry to hear about you and Kat. That's a real shame. If things don't get better with you and her, we can give it a trial run. But you know that if it becomes too difficult for everyone for you to work from there, then you need to be prepared to move back here." "Fair. That's fair. Thanks for considering it. Hopefully it won't come to that." Speaking of Kat, how much longer will she be in Spain? This week and next, plus another week in New York. The first episode of this year's show from Spain should air this Thursday. I'll be curious to watch to see how it goes without you there. I doubt she'll miss a beat. We'll see. Take care, Hank. Let me know how we can help. Will do. Hank had dinner with Eva and Eric each night that he was there. While it was good to see them, there was a lot of tension from not knowing what was going to happen with him and Kat. He returned on Thursday to Asheville and drove straight into the food bank to help in the afternoon. When the girls arrived, they both gave him hugs upon seeing him. He was surprised at how good it felt to see the two again. Morgan watched them, and while she smiled upon seeing the hug, she was glowing on the inside. That night he watched the first episode from her current filming from Scott's server, and it looked really good. The first episode always lays out the construction plan and the computer images of the expected result. The apartment this year was much larger than the one the previous year and was going to require much more work. It was an ambitious project, but between the money from her sponsors and what she would make from selling the apartment, it looked like she would do well. All the extra work should make for good episodes. Nothing about Kat's appearance was any different from her previous shows. She looked fresh and gorgeous as always. After he finished watching it, he sent off texts to Scott and Tina congratulating them on their work. He also sent Catalina a text congratulating her and asking if he could call her the next day, Friday. She replied asking him to call her on Saturday after lunch, her time. He agreed. On Saturday, Hank was up early to call Kat. Before he called, he wondered if anything would come from the call that would tip the scales in one direction or the other. She answered on the first ring. "Hey. How are you? What did you think?" The first thing out of her mouth was about the show. "I'm good. I thought it was like you picked up straight from last year. The show looked really good. How are you?" "Tired but making it. We had a good week of cooking. Mom's in a cooking episode, which I think is going to look good. The apartment is looking great. Are you still traveling?" "Yeah. Working from Asheville and staying in our house here." She asked, "Oh. Is that going okay?" "It's work. Nothing special. You holding up okay? Burning the midnight oil at the clubs, I see." She fumbled a bit but should have known it was coming since her mother had mentioned it.
Oh. That? Oh, you know.
Just trying to expand my network and look good in front of the local town.
Barcelona could be an audience one day.
One of their players stopped by the set. He and his parents own a bunch of villas all along the Spanish coast and are thinking about sponsoring some shows.
Wouldn't that be great? Sounds very lucrative. It could be. Just think.
If I had sponsors in Spain, we could come here more often and write it off as a business expense.
That sounds great, Kat. Listen, hun. Sheila's here for us to go shopping. I need to run. Have a good day.
You too. There were no endearments, nor terms of affection.
No, I love you.
At least she asked him how he was doing.
He tried Tina and Scott answered. Hey, buddy. How's my future home of Asheville? Hank laughed and replied, Asheville is good. I have a guest bedroom ready for the two of you. How did this week go?
I spoke to Kat a minute ago, and she said the cooking episodes are going well.
I think it's great that Merle's is in one of them. I guess they are going fine. Nothing special if you ask me.
The episode with Merle should be interesting.
Why is that?
Even though she's almost 70, she should come across well on the television, and she's a sweet lady. Oh, no doubt, she looks good on camera. And she is a sweet lady, but I'm not sure if the audience will see that without some heavy editing.
Hank asked, what happened? Tina spoke up. You aren't going to like this, Hank. Oh, no. Her boyfriend, the soccer player, was on set every day this week. He's in several episodes, including the one with Merle's.
She was staring daggers at him the entire time. Yesterday I heard her tell him in Spanish that if he showed up again next week, she would cut his balls off while we were filming.
Hank groaned, fuck.
If she said that, there is no telling what she really thinks is going on. In one episode, the boyfriend licked some batter off Kat's finger. I nearly fell out of my chair.
Scott and I are both ready to quit.
I feel like our staying is somehow endorsing what she is doing.
No. Don't break your contract. You need to get paid.
Scott said, I don't know if she's sleeping with him or not, but clearly she, Sheila, and Felicia are meeting him and others out at night. It may not be showing up on her social media anymore, but it is on his.
Damn. I warned her. I'm not going to put up with that kind of crap. Tina said, we don't know anything for certain yet.
They have been talking about remaking some of his family villas in the future and turning those into several series of episodes. Maybe she's just doing business, but she's being awfully friendly about it.
Scott and I will keep watching and listening. I suspect she thinks that we won't say anything because we're afraid of our jobs. I'm with you. We'll get through the next week, then we'll quit.
We've got quite a bit in the bank, hoping I could cut back once we had kids, but that will give us time to find something.
Hank shook his head. His wife was such an ass. Well, I've got extra bedrooms. You can always relocate and find something here. It looks like this is where I'm going to be anyway.
We're sorry, Hank.
Me too.
Just do a good job so that your portfolio of work stays unblemished.
Will do. Take care of yourself. You too. Again, Hank was feeling adrift. He wished he could save his marriage, but it takes two. He thought about Merle's, chuckled, and sent her a text, cut his balls off?
It didn't take long for her to reply.
Damn straight.
Even if I don't actually castrate him, I can have an accident while holding a knife and cut him. You know, once women get my age, they can get senile and make mistakes, especially while holding a knife.
Don't make me have to come and bail you out of jail.
She replied with a smiley emoji.
Only if that's what it takes for you to visit me.
At least I still have one child that hasn't lost their mind.
Yes, Catalina is an only child, so that means I'm talking about you.
You're coming here for Thanksgiving and staying through Christmas.
Plan on it. You always could find a way to make me smile.
Hank said, it's purely a selfish compulsion.
I love seeing your beautiful smile. Flatterer. Okay. I'm convinced. Will my grandbabies be there? Oh, I'm hurt that you aren't coming just for me. You're still married to my dipshit daughter. If you weren't, then I could try you on for size. He wasn't quite certain how to respond to that. Then he received another smiley emoji and a gotcha. Take care of yourself, Hank. There are a lot of people that love you, including me. Oh, I'm sure she does too, but she's about to screw that up. Love you too, Mamacita. Stop it. You know I don't like it when you call me that. He smiled, but nearly spit out his tea when she sent, I only let me lovers call me that, followed by a wink emoji. Clearly, someone had been showing her how to add emojis to her texts. Probably Tina. That brought a brief smile to Hank. He loved his mother-in-law. Sigh. Too bad she didn't have another daughter that was more like her. The next day at lunch, Hank was hoping they would like his food. He bought what he needed the day before but was out the door at the crack of dawn to get some fresh pita bread from a bakery that made it every day. He served grilled homemade merguez sausages and some Moroccan spiced grilled chicken over creamy polenta with Parmesan cheese. With that was a spinach salad with walnuts and feta cheese. He also prepared roasted red pepper hummus and a roasted tomato reduction with red onion and goat cheese for dipping with the pita bread. They would have to make do with store-bought ice cream for dessert. He heard them drive up, and he went out to welcome them. The girls were wide-eyed upon looking around. It was a stately and large 5-bedroom home, with a stone exterior. It was set high on a hill and had a great view of the Smokies. Inside, he gave them the nickel tour including the large professional kitchen, beautiful backyard, and pool with a separate pool house. Hank said, Julia, anytime you or Morgan or Bill want to bring them to swim you are welcome. The key is under that flower pot, so I don't need to be here. The girls were looking at their mother imploringly. To the girls, she said, we'll talk about it later, but only if you do a good job on your lunch. They did. Hank had given her a heads up regarding the pool, and she said that she would bring swimsuits for the girls. He received several compliments on the food. Julia said, I'm impressed. Really? It's clear that either you've been paying attention or practicing on your own. Nice job. A bit of both. Thanks. Did you watch the episodes? She replied, we did. I've got to tell you, we were surprised by those first few episodes. I don't want this to sound hurtful, but how could she not see how bad that looked? The last few episodes in the kitchen were really, really good. So at least she should have her audience coming back for more. Morgan and Bill were shaking their head. Hank shrugged, I don't know. I've tried to explain to her how damaging that was, but she won't listen to me. Honestly, I think she has only one thing on her mind right now, and that's becoming famous nationally. I hate that for our kids, but if she won't listen, it won't do me any good to try to drag her back to me. Are you ready to watch the newest episode? Hank played it for them while they ate their ice cream. When finished, Bella said, Mr. Hank, until Mama paused the show so we could get a good look at you, we didn't know that was you and your wife. We didn't know you were famous. Hank laughed out loud. Ha ha. I'm not famous. She is. Morgan said, I believe she had a lot of help from her family to achieve that. He didn't want to get into that discussion, so he just said, she did. Morgan helped him clean up while Julia retrieved the swimsuits for the girls. They were excited to get to go swimming. After cleaning up, Hank changed and met the girls in the pool. He was surprised but pleased when Julia, in a swimsuit, joined them in the pool. Bill went inside to watch the Braves game, but Morgan stayed outside for the much more serious game. After they were all tuckered out, they changed, and the girls wanted to watch more episodes of Cat, which included Hank. He set it up so that they could watch, and Morgan and Julia stayed with the girls while Hank grabbed a beer for him and Bill and joined him in watching the Braves game. Later they ordered Chinese for dinner. When it was time to go, everyone thanked him for being such a good host and for an enjoyable day. He received hugs from the girls, a kiss on the cheek from Morgan and Julia, and a handshake from Bill. By the time Hank actually got into bed, he realized that he'd had a really good day. Over at Morgan and Bill's house, everyone was thinking the same thing. Chapter 4. The next day, while the girls were still in camp, Hank arrived to get the keys for the truck and go pick up some donated food. Morgan saw him approaching her office, and after he entered to retrieve the keys, she stood and closed the door behind him. When he turned around, she hugged him to her fiercely. "I don't know what your plans are, Hank, but I hope you stick around here. You've made a real difference in the life of those girls and their mother. I know they aren't in a bad place, so it's not like you are picking them up off the street, but they are all much happier because of you. Thank you for that. They've grown on me, too. Such sweet girls. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll find a way to stay involved in their lives some way, assuming Julia will let me. Don't worry. I believe she's starting to see that the more of you they have in their lives, the better off all of them will be." Hank wasn't certain exactly how she meant that, but simply said, "I'm glad." Each day he picked up some drinks for the girls, and they told him about their day at camp while he unloaded the truck. On Wednesday, he texted Merle's, "Cut any balls off yet?" She sent him an on-fire angry emoji. "I told her as long as he was there that I wouldn't be. She hasn't called me, so I've not gone back." He replied, "Damn. She's burning bridges to the right and left. She's not stupid. I'm not sure if it's the fame or the money, but she's completely disconnected from reality at the moment. One day she's going to wake up and be sorry." "I'm sorry, Merle's. I wish I could have done more." "What? No mamacita today? I don't want to make your lovers jealous. You let me worry about that. I love you, Hank. You are a good son. Love my grandbabies for me." "I will." He would call his kids that night to let them know that they were loved. Friday afternoon he received an interesting text from Kat. "I'm staying in Spain an extra week to close out some things here and spend a few days with my mother. Then to New York for network meetings and then home. The show wasn't the same without you." Hank scoffed when he read that and thought, clearly it wasn't. The next text puzzled him even more. "I would like for us to find a way to work on our marriage when I get back." "I'd like that, too. Say hello to Mamacita for me." "Will do." An hour later Scott was calling. Hank picked up and said, "And that's a wrap. How did it go?" "The filming was fine. The episodes will look good, but they are going to raise a lot of questions." "In what way?" Tina joined the conversation. "Hey, Hank. I'm sorry to keep bringing you bad news, but this time it really is awful. Kat's boyfriend, Lorenzo, was in several episodes this week, again. They filmed a few in Spanish and Catalan to distribute to some Spanish networks to gauge their interest. The two of them were very flirty, so anyone that knows she's married, like her fans and sponsors at home, is going to wonder what's up. I mean, she still has her rings on." Hank was shaking his head. Tina continued, "It gets worse. She and her boyfriend have arranged a date, and not just any date. She's going to join him for a week on his yacht in Ibiza. With all the paparazzi that are there, I don't know how he will keep that a secret unless they don't leave his yacht. Maybe they won't, or maybe she doesn't care. If you've looked at his social media pages, you'll see that he's a famous enough athlete that when he's out and about, people recognize him. He even has a fiancée who isn't happy about his clubbing with Kat, Sheila, and Felicia. I know this is like the worst possible thing, but we had to tell you. Oh, and we're quitting as soon as the check clears. We're done. Damn. I guess that's it. I kept hoping she would come back, but it was just false hope. Thanks for letting me know. I know what I need to do now." "And that is?" "Serve her divorce papers as soon as she gets home." Tina asked, "Why wait? How will I find her off the coast of Ibiza? And even if I knew where she was, how would I have her served? Would it even be legal there?" Scott said, "Hank, if you are sure about this, we can make this happen. You know us. If we put our minds to it, we can get it done. All you need to do is have your attorney email us the papers. Even if it isn't a US process server, or upheld in the US, she'll get the message while on his boat." Hank chuckled, "Okay,
I'll have him email it to you for you to print out and have delivered.
Just let me know what you spend, and I'll reimburse you.
Oh, and I'll start looking for jobs for you down here.
Thanks, Hank. Obviously, we feel betrayed in all this too.
I know it isn't the same thing as being married, but she's losing all respect for anyone from her past. She may as well move to New York or Barcelona because this isn't going to end well for her.
I cannot believe that she doesn't see that.
You won't get any arguments from me.
Let me know how you make out. Scott said, we'll keep you advised.
Thank you, both of you.
You're true family.
You are too, replied Tina. When Hank hung up, he was saddened and relieved at the same time. It was over.
She wanted out badly enough, so he was going to let her go.
She could stay in Pittsburgh or go to New York or Spain.
He didn't care. He couldn't. Not after the last year. Not anymore.
He had his attorney change the division of assets slightly since he was planning on helping out Scott and Tina. Then he instructed him to email the document to Scott.
He honestly didn't know what to do. He felt so numb. He thought he would just go home for now. He wouldn't be good company around anyone.
Fortunately, he had finished unloading the truck earlier. Normally he would help others pack the pickup bags for the food bank customers, but they would need to do it without him today.
Maybe he would try to make up his time over the weekend.
When he walked into Morgan's office, the girls were on their devices. He smiled at them and asked to speak to Morgan outside for a minute. He told her that his marriage had finally died, and he needed to go home.
She understood.
She asked, home, meaning here or Pittsburgh?
He replied, this is home now.
She hugged him again and told him to let her know how she could help. After arriving home, he laid down on the couch and fell asleep. Whether it was from the news today or the fact that the nightmare of the last 18 or so months was finally over, he was exhausted. Later he prepared something to eat, which he couldn't taste, and watched the Braves game. No need to watch the Pirates since they were going to lose anyway. Had there been any ice cream in the house, he would have consumed it all. He made do with mountains of popcorn and several beers. About 10 p.m. he received a text from Morgan.
Can I stop by about 11 p.m.? I just want to check on you.
He thought, why not, and replied, sure.
See you then.
He must have dozed off because he was awakened by a knock at his door. Assuming it was Morgan, he opened it and was surprised to see Julia standing there, still in her chef clothes. As soon as the door was open, she was hugging him. She said, Aunt Morgan is in the car. She called me, and I got off early to check on you.
Are you okay? I will be.
The weird thing is that absolutely nothing has changed since yesterday, not really.
But it's like I've been cast adrift. It's the strangest feeling. You know that isn't true.
Your rock of the last 20-something years has been blown up.
Of course, you're going to feel strange.
When my husband died, I wasn't very happy with him at that moment and hadn't been for some time, but I still felt a huge sense of loss when it happened.
Stay busy. Things will get better. Easier said than done. I don't feel like doing anything. I don't feel anything.
He could see her processing that bit of information, then she said, do me a favor, don't make any plans for tomorrow.
Ha! I can promise you that. Good. I'll call you in the morning to check on you. Okay?
Okay. She pulled him down for a kiss on the cheek and said, you know you have family here that cares about you.
Don't you? I do. Thank you, Julia. Your stopping by means a lot to me.
She smiled at him and said, I'll talk to you tomorrow. The next morning, he still felt like he was in a fog, so he prepared some coffee and sat outside while sipping it.
At 8 a.m., his doorbell rang. He muttered, what the?
As soon as he opened the door, the girls were hugging him.
Julia was standing behind them grinning and holding a box of donuts. Amber said, Mama said you needed some cheering up, so we came over.
We have a whole day of activities planned. He looked at Julia, who was still grinning at him, knowing that he wouldn't refuse those girls.
He welcomed them in and told them, lead the way.
They did. They hiked in the morning, and when they returned, Morgan and Bill had brought the food for lunch.
Swimming was later in the afternoon, followed by putt-putt that night.
Sunday was a repeat of the previous day in that the girls showed up early and filled his day with activities. That night they put on a Pixar movie, which he watched with a young girl on each side of him. As his entertainers prepared to leave that night, he thanked all of them. Julia was the last to leave, and she gave him a long kiss on the cheek.
"Thank you, Julia.
Words aren't enough to describe my appreciation for what all of you did this weekend." Then he picked her up and twirled her around, saying, "This is the best I've got for now." Once she was back on the ground, she kissed his cheek again, and they were gone.
An 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 59-year-old were grinning from ear to ear as Julia climbed into their SUV. Very early on Monday morning, his phone rang. He could see that it was Kat, so he didn't bother answering it. He could also see a text from Scott, "She's been served. Also, I didn't take the pictures that are going around."
Hank thought, pictures? Another text, but from Kat, said, "Call me."
It isn't what it looks like.
He thought, it never is with her. Kat tried to call him again, but he wouldn't pick up. Another text from Kat, "I didn't sleep with him."
This was getting more interesting.
Rather than calling her, he got up, put on a pot of coffee, and texted Scott, "You have my full attention."
Immediately his phone rang. When Hank answered, he said, "I'm getting crazy texts from Kat. Before I call her, do you want to tell me what is going on? You can thank Tina for letting you sleep in."
I had planned on having her served earlier, but then Tina reminded me that you were several hours behind, and she didn't want Kat calling you at 3 a.m. your time.
Okay. What happened?
Our work was fairly straightforward. Last week, while Kat was filming, Tina, who has access to Kat's phone because of the nature of the work, put a tracking app on her iPhone since we were suspicious. It was an app that Kat wouldn't know to turn off if she disabled the usual Apple tracking apps. We flew down to Ibiza, which is a great place, by the way.
You should come sometime.
Anyway, with that app, it was easy to locate his yacht, which was anchored just outside of the marina, and watch them. We found an attorney who could arrange for her to be served, but no official would serve her on the weekend. Well, serve isn't quite right in another country, more like officially deliver the papers.
This is a tiny island off the coast of Spain.
So, we had to wait until today. The attorney arranged for a constable, or some kind of officer, and a small Coast Guard vessel to deliver the papers just after noon our time. The interesting thing was that as the Coast Guard vessel was easing out there were a dozen other small boats following them at a distance. Through our binoculars, we could see the Coast Guard vessel arrive. When it did, they both stood up. He was in a small and tight swimsuit. She was topless. Today wasn't the first day either. Tina and I could see her walking around topless all weekend on his boat. They haven't been on the island since they arrived. So far, as best we can tell, they've been on the boat the entire time. She was only topless for maybe 10 or 15 seconds before she covered up and the constable climbed on board. After she was served, she ran back inside and below deck. We're still watching, but we haven't seen her since. Tina jumped on, now for the rest of the story. Hank shook his head, wondering what he was about to hear. We suspected, and it would appear that those other boats following the Coast Guard boat were paparazzi. It's doubtful they were there for her, so they were probably tipped about Lorenzo with someone besides his fiancée on his yacht. When he and Kat stood up, those cameras must have been clicking furiously. Within minutes, El País in Madrid, La Vanguardia in Barcelona, TMZ, Access Hollywood, Online New York, and The Sun Page 3 in London all had pictures of a topless Kat and Lorenzo on their websites with various captions mentioning them by name. Some of the pictures were quite clear. Oh, Lord. The hits just keep on coming. I need to call the kids to give them a heads up, groaned Hank. Tina said, "Oh crap. I'm sorry, Hank. I promise you we didn't say anything to anyone. The only person we've spoken to on the island is the attorney that helped us arrange her being served." Hank replied, "Don't worry about it. If she weren't on his fucking yacht, or fucking him on his yacht, this wouldn't have been a problem, would it?" I'd bet money that the attorney made a few calls and got paid. Since he wouldn't want them to tip the lovers off early, he probably just told them to follow the constable.
Well, now I know what I'm dealing with.
I feel bad for the kids in Merrill's, though.
Ha! Kat wanted to be famous.
She got her wish. We're both sorry, but yes, she did. Oh, by the way, the paparazzi are still swarming around the yacht.
We'll let them do the monitoring from now on.
Oh, and I'll be curious to see how all of this falls out with Lorenzo's fiancée.
Hank said, thanks for everything, both of you. Why don't the two of you stay there a few days, my treat, and then fly on home, or better yet, come here.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Hank. Call us if you need anything.
Will do. Hank took a minute to look at some of the snaps that were already online.
Tina was right, some of those pictures were very clear and revealing.
There was no mistaking that it was her, and her luscious and voluptuous 40-something boobs were now captured and displayed perfectly for all the world to see. He wondered how long it would take her to return home. He scoffed, realizing that first, he didn't care, and second, he had no idea how to answer that question because he truly didn't know her anymore.
She was a completely different woman than she used to be.
Before calling the kids, he decided he would send her one last text.
Say hi to your mom for me. Oh wait, when did she get so hairy and grow a dick?
Sign the papers, Kat.
Don't call. Don't text. Don't come. I'm blocking your number, as of now.
Then he did block her number. He called Eva and Eric and told them what had happened, from Lorenzo showing up on set to her being served, and the pictures released. They were mortified. Eric didn't think he would have a problem in college, because most people didn't know that he was Catalina's son. Eva was considering whether or not she should take a couple of days off of work, because everyone at work knew her mother was Catalina. She was worried about showing her face there.
He dreaded what came next. Merrill's didn't deserve this.
He forwarded Kat's text about visiting with Merrill's to her.
Then he waited 5 minutes and called her.
She answered, "Hey Hank.
I see your text."
She hasn't been here, so I'm assuming that is what this call is about.
Hey, Merrill's. Yep, this isn't a mamacita type of call. I just sent you a link. I need you to open it.
Oh? He waited while she did. Then he heard, "Oh, no." He had sent her a link to one of the newspaper's websites, where Catalina was standing, topless, next to Lorenzo with a questioning look on her face.
That's right.
She sent me that text about her finishing some things in Spain and then visiting with you. Then I discovered that she was spending time with her boyfriend on his yacht. So I had her served. I'm sorry for the trouble this is going to cause you, but I thought it would be better for you to hear it from me than to get blindsided by someone else.
I appreciate that. I do. I'm sorry I didn't raise her better. Are you going to be okay? Yeah. And you did a fine job. I think it's her New York team that has been influencing her.
She stepped away from her family and allowed someone else to cloud her judgment.
This isn't on us. It's on her. She asked, "Have you told Eva and Eric?" Just a few minutes ago.
Eva's worried about showing her face at work.
She was planning to come here for Labor Day anyway. I believe I can talk her into coming here a few days earlier. I hope you can. I'll be there as soon as I can get a ticket. That is if you don't mind. I meant it when I said you are always welcome. Come as soon as you can and stay as long as you want. Thank you, my son. I'll let you know when I have my ticket. I love you. Love you, too, Mom.
Having completed what needed to be done that morning, he got ready and left for work. Knowing this was coming and after being consoled all weekend, he was actually feeling okay and got a lot of work done. When he arrived at the food bank in the afternoon, he delivered to Morgan a large arrangement of flowers and another one for her to take home to Julia as a thank you for the previous weekend. He told Morgan, quietly, so the girls couldn't hear, what had happened that morning. She empathized with him and told him to let her know how she could help.
He worked until the food bank closed that night at 7 p.m., something he didn't usually do. He watched as many of the people that he had seen before picked the same pickup bags full of pre-selected foods and thanked God for his current situation, which clearly could be much worse. He thought about the hurt that Kat had inflicted on him and others and wanted to find a way to help his family and friends. He wondered if he could do something for them and help out the food bank at the same time. He spent a lot of time that night thinking about that. On Tuesday he called Scott and Tina and directly asked them to bypass Pittsburgh and fly straight to Asheville. He had something that might be of interest to them. It was a tough week for Eva. She called him from her car nearly in tears on Wednesday morning. She had taken Monday and Tuesday off. When she went in on Wednesday, someone had printed, in color, a picture of her mom from one of the websites and left it on her desk. At the bottom of the pictures they had written, "Nice rack. Like mother, like daughter?" After she told him what happened, he told her, "Here's what you need to do. Take that picture back inside, go to the manager of HR, slap it down on their desk, and say that you want the person found and reprimanded. Then tell her you are preparing to file a harassment charge with the EEOC. That will let them know that you've spoken with someone who understands the situation, probably an attorney. Then say that you won't be returning to work until they've resolved the situation. Finally, pack a couple of bags and come here. You may want to fly, but I suggest you drive because I'm hoping that you will be staying for a while." "Okay, Daddy. I'll leave in the morning and arrive there tomorrow afternoon. Why don't you call Eric and both of you come together in your vehicle, and I'll fly him back." "Sounds good." It was after midnight the next night when Eva and Eric arrived. When Eva walked into the kitchen the next morning, she exclaimed, "Nana," and ran over to hug her grandmother, who she hadn't seen in almost a year. Marlies had arrived the afternoon before, and Hank hadn't told his kids that she was coming, hoping for a pleasant surprise. Tina and Scott arrived late Friday, and Hank had a house full of guests for the Labor Day weekend. On Saturday, he laid out his ideas for getting Scott and Tina re-employed, and what he hoped would be Eva's involvement. They would need a big assist from Julia, but she was curious and willing. Marlies, Morgan, and the girls were all in. Tina and Scott were cautiously optimistic, also. They spent the Saturday and Sunday of Labor Day weekend working through various suggestions, ideas, and plans. Hank and Julia would need to talk to the owners of her restaurant soon, probably during the upcoming week. Monday, Labor Day, just before lunch, the adults were kicking around more ideas in the large kitchen and dining area while Marlies was entertaining the girls when they heard the front door open and Kat walked in. They were all surprised by her arrival. No one, not even Marlies, rose to greet her. The silence was deafening. Amber and Bella simply stood and stared at the celebrity standing there, not understanding what the problem was. Hank asked, "What are you doing here?" Kat replied, "It's Labor Day, and I wanted to spend it with my family, who all gathered here without telling me." "Oh, so you have a family now?" Before Kat could reply, Julia called the girls to meet her outside. Hank asked, "Where are you going?" Julia replied, "It looks like you need to have a family discussion." "Exactly, so where are you going?" Morgan and Julia both liked that implication, but Julia still responded, "The girls aren't quite old enough for the conversation that you need to have, but thanks for including us in that statement." Hank nodded and Julia ushered the girls out back. Morgan and Bill remained. Kat exaggeratedly put her hands on her hips. "What was that about? Have you replaced me already? I could ask you the same thing? I didn't sleep with him." There wasn't a single repentant sound in her voice. Once again, you fail to see how your actions have affected others. Even if you didn't sleep with him, and only you and your boyfriend know the truth regarding that, nobody else on the planet believes that you didn't. You can't mean that. So far all the onlookers were going back and forth between them like spectators at a tennis match. Hank asked, "Mom, what do you think? Did Kat sleep with her boyfriend?" "Hank, please don't make me answer that question." Kat's eyes bugged out after hearing her mother. "Okay. Then how about this? Before you flew here, did any of your friends think that she hadn't slept with him?" Marlies shook her head no.
Hank said, "Okay everyone," with a show of hands, who thinks Kat did not sleep with her boyfriend? Nobody raised their hand. Kat was hurt that her kids didn't raise their hands. She huffed, "He's not my boyfriend, but he is about to become a business partner. He's retiring from soccer, and we are going to redo several of his family's villas together. I was spending the week with him to work out the details."
On your back? Hank! Merlees pleaded.
Hank looked at Merlees and rolled his eyes. "Fine." He turned back to his wife and asked, "Why are you here, Kat?"
"Because my family is here, and I told you that I wanted to work on our marriage when I returned."
"Then why did you lie to me about visiting with your mom in one text, while saying you wanted to work on our marriage in the next?" "Since we both know the first statement is a lie, it makes me think the second one is a lie, also. I knew you would be upset about my spending time on his yacht."
"Nothing happened.
"We were examining which villas we should do first."
"I'm sure you were, topless."
"The pictures online made it clear that you were giving him plenty to examine." "I'm sorry that those pictures were posted online, but if you hadn't had any served there, then the paparazzi wouldn't have taken them. Besides, in Spain being topless on the beach is no big deal. Before the kids were born, I was topless with you on the beach several times and you didn't seem to mind."
"True, and afterwards, who did you sleep with that night?"
She growled, "I didn't sleep with him."
Hank shook his head.
He asked, "If your family or your marriage is so important to you, why did it take you a week to get here?" "I was helping our new business partner do damage control. Then I had to fly to New York to meet with executives there and then Pittsburgh to meet with some of my sponsors." She didn't tell Hank that one of the New York execs she met asked her point blank if the yacht pictures were a setup. Because of the network and who the exec was, she didn't deny it, and the exec didn't seem to mind.
Hank scoffed, "Let me guess.
You needed to do some damage control with your long-term Pittsburgh sponsors because their audiences might not appreciate how you were negotiating with your new business partner while your clueless husband was still in the States."
He nailed it. Catalina didn't know how to defend that statement, so she went on the offensive.
"I still cannot believe that all of you, my family, are willing to throw me under the bus so quickly."
"Don't I deserve at least a little benefit of the doubt?"
Scott said, "Don't go there, Kat. Your behavior on set the last few weeks eroded much of that."
"Thanks, Scott. For that remark, the two of you are fired. Besides, I was just acting. You know it wasn't real."
Tina said, "Kat, we don't care what you do as long as the check clears. We were planning on quitting before you replaced us with a New York crew." Once again, Kat was surprised that the people in the room seemed to know more about her behind-the-scenes movements than she thought they should. Merle spoke up and said, "Then, daughter, you are one hell of an actress. While filming, you had me convinced that your interest in him was more than just as a business partner. I'm sure your PBS audience, who know that you are still married, will think he is more than that, too." That put her back on her heels.
"Why are all of you ganging up on me?"
Eva replied, "We aren't ganging up on you, Mom, but we can't understand why you would just show up after years of neglect and what you did this week and expect us to simply welcome some stranger into the fold. Hell, strangers have been less harmful to our lives than you. Also, you haven't been part of this family for a long time, and you continue to refuse to see how your public actions affect our private lives."
"What are you talking about?"
Eva said, "First, it's been all about you for years. You haven't been available for almost anything since my senior year in high school, which is when I really wanted to do things together with you, my friends, and their moms before I left the house to go to college.
Nana came over to help me pick out my senior prom dress because you didn't have the time.
I can list another dozen examples over the last several years of when you weren't there for me."
Kat's mouth was open at that inconvenient memory.
"Then this week, someone at work printed out a picture of you topless on the yacht and put it on my desk. Thanks to you, in everyone else's mind, you just lowered my IQ by at least 20 points. With my figure looking so much like yours, I already struggle to try to get people to take me seriously, but now they'll never look me in the eyes again. They'll be staring at my chest wondering how it compares to yours. Thanks, Mom, you may have helped your career, but who knows how many years you set mine back." Tears were beginning to form in Eva's eyes as she finished her statement. This was not going the way that Kat had expected. She knew she would have to do some ass kissing with Hank, but she hadn't even thought about everyone else. She tried a different tactic. But sweetie, I was doing it for all of us. With the money I make, we can do so many things. Don't worry about your career because you can come work for me. The look of disgust that crossed Eva's face let Kat know that wasn't going to happen anytime soon. Eva continued, Mother. Do you know who contacted me on Friday? Whom? That newspaper in the UK that posted pictures of you reached out to me to see if I would be willing to do a mother-daughter topless spread. Great. Just what I need. I can only imagine who's going to be calling me next. Kat was mortified over that. Hank didn't know if that was true or not, but he wasn't about to ask at that moment. Eric spoke up, Gee, Mom, if you just wanted to be famous, or infamous, why didn't you and that guy just produce a sex tape? You could have jumped straight to the front of the line like some other celebrities. This was a direct hit. Kat couldn't believe that her children were ganging up on her. She couldn't hold back the tears any yell. Anjur. Merlis didn't think the conversation was going to improve from there, so she decided to step in. Catalina, come with me for a minute. Please. Merlis walked by Hank and squeezed his arm. Then she gently turned Kat around and escorted her out the door through which she entered. 5 minutes later she came back inside with tears streaming down her face. She walked up to Hank, holding her arms out, needing comforting. He asked, Are you okay, Mom? I will be. I just told my daughter that she needed to leave before she or we started saying things we can't take back. I'm afraid we already did. I offered to spend the day with her tomorrow, but I'm staying here tonight because Eric is leaving in the morning, and I may not see him again for who knows how long. I haven't heard her rental car start, so she may still be sitting there crying. I don't know. I believe she is finally beginning to realize what her actions have cost her. She continued, Do me a favor, Hank. Please. Don't be mean to her. Ignore her. Protect the kids. Protect yourself. But don't be mean to her. I know that she doesn't deserve any favors from us, but I'm asking you, as a favor to me, please be kind to my daughter. He hugged her back, Sure, Mom. I promise that I'll try. Morgan went out and told Julia that they could come back inside. When the girls came in, they hugged Hank. Julia thought he needed cheering up. Hank whispered into the girls' ears, and soon they were hugging Merlis. The look Julia was giving Hank let him know that it was a good and appreciated suggestion. It was a tough night for everyone. Being the Labor Day weekend, it took her a while, but Kat eventually found a SOSO hotel room about 20 minutes away. She cried until she checked into her hotel room. Then she opened her laptop and got to work. If her family didn't want her anymore, she'd show them. She would still be a success. The next morning Hank, Eva, and Merlis drove Eric to the airport. Merlis was already missing her grandson whom, before this trip, she hadn't seen for nearly a year. Before he said his final goodbye, he told her, Nana, just stay here, with us. When I graduate next year, I'll move down here, or near here, and then you can be with us all the time. But Barcelona's my home. I've lived in or near there for my entire life. I know it isn't an easy choice, but it's one that we would love for you to consider. I will think about it. For my grandbabies. They hugged, and Eric went through security. Hank and Eva then drove Merlis to Kat's hotel. A minute after dropping her off, Eva's phone rang. Apparently, Kat had already checked out. A few hours later, Merlis would learn that Kat caught an early flight back to New York. Chapter 5. Things moved quickly after that. Hank, Morgan, and Julia approached the owners of her restaurant with the idea to have a benefit on one of their less busy nights shortly before Thanksgiving to help the local food bank. Eva, Tina, and Scott's new marketing firm would promote the event, and while the restaurant was already popular, the promotion would help get their name out there more. Scott offered for his company to cover the cost of the food so that all proceeds would go to the food bank. The owners agreed to host the benefit, and everyone began to make preparations for that. Hank was trying to kill several birds with one stone. He sought the support of and received input from everyone that was at his house on Labor Day. First, he was looking to personally fund a few projects for Scott and Tina in the Asheville area. In addition to the event at the restaurant, he planned to have Scott and Tina do a complete series of in-depth interviews with those involved in the food bank, including Morgan and some of the families that needed the food bank's services. Several commercials that could be used would be created also. Hank offered to pay the tuition at Asheville's highly regarded community college for the families Morgan had selected to be in the food bank videos if they were interested. Prior to having Kat served, Hank had his attorney shift the division of assets in the revised divorce agreement to favor him a little more to help pay for this work. Even with that shift, the division of assets was still in Kat's favor. When the problems arose at Eva's work, he felt like she was a gift falling into his lap. While he hated that she had problems, her being there grew the idea that he originally had. He knew that he wanted Eva to stay in Asheville near him. He hoped she would be interested in that. He encouraged her, Scott, and Tina to start their own marketing company. He would provide startup funding for the business, including the first year of salaries, and they would do what they knew best. Scott and Tina could still produce professional video content but could work with Eva to either sell their services to clients that Eva brought in or could use Eva to help market whatever clients they developed. Everyone was eager to give it a try, though they were very nervous, except for Tina. She could see this leading to a chance for her and Scott to have kids, with less of the travel that they had following Kat all over the place. The person most reserved regarding Hank's suggestions was Julia because he would need her knowledge and skills. Hank wanted her to develop 2 cookbooks, which she had never done before. However, Hank had been involved in the development of several. Scott and Tina had been intimately involved. With that support, she agreed to give it a try. She did say, "Hank, you know the last thing this world needs is another cookbook. Right?" He didn't try to persuade her that it did as much as he convinced her that it was for a good cause, and they had the right team, Tina, Scott, and Eva, to make it a success. The first book was to be entirely for the benefit of the food bank. In a play on one of the greatest ads of all time, Got Milk? Hank wanted the book to be titled Got Gravy? The cover would have a cropped picture of someone's face from below their eyes to their chin, and instead of a milk mustache, it would have a gravy mustache. It was an obvious play on the famous ad, but it was for a good cause. It wouldn't be a cookbook of only gravy recipes, because honestly, how many gravy recipes are out there? It would include gravies and sauces, which have much greater variety and purposes. The marketing of that cookbook was to be the marketing company's first job. Once the list of recipes to be included was finalized, Tina and Scott planned and videoed the entire production, with Julia's food plated perfectly, plenty of pictures taken, and helpful videos added to the food bank website. By the time of the food bank benefit at Malta, they could begin promoting the book with an anticipated launch date. The second cookbook Hank requested was to be a Mediterranean cookbook featuring variations of the recipes that Julia cooked at Malta. Hank was planning for the marketing company to promote this book also. Instead of adding the videos to the food bank website, Hank had a website created for Julia. Again, there are already thousands of these types of sites out there, but most of them didn't have what Julia would have available to her, professional resources, and Hank had his reasons for wanting her to do this. A couple of weeks before Thanksgiving was the night of the fundraiser at the restaurant. Hank had Scott film Julia as she was cooking and had her on camera talking about her assistance in helping the executive chef develop new menu items, evaluate new suppliers, and ensure consistency and quality in their finished product. The owners watched most of this and were pleased to hear what Julia had to say. None of it surprised them because they had known her for years and knew her to be a skilled professional. There were even 2 local TV stations there to film a few takes during the benefit, including interviews with Morgan, the restaurant owners, and Julia for broadcast that night and the next day. It was a successful evening. After the night was over and the funds were raised, the girls were excited to watch their mother on camera. They had helped her some in her cookbook videos, which turned out very cute. Merle's was still there and was included in several videos, also. All during this time, the girls were growing closer to Hank, who was still working from the local factory with the occasional trip back to Pittsburgh, but with the summer over, he was no longer spending a few hours each day at the food bank. He was working full days at his office in the factory and helping where he could with the cookbooks in the evening. Morgan and Bill were there with the girls many nights, and they got along well with Marlies, who loved being around the girls. She was hoping that she would soon have 2 new grandbabies, but that was still some time off, even with Kat signing the divorce papers a month after receiving them. Sunday night after Thanksgiving, which was one of Julia's rare nights off, she and Hank were sitting on his outdoor couch overlooking his backyard while sipping some wine after a long evening of putting the final polishes on the gravy cookbook, when Julia asked, "Hank, can I ask you a serious question?" He smiled at her and replied, "Always." She liked that answer and returned his smile, though she didn't know if it would keep. She asked, "I appreciate everything that you are doing for the food bank, Aunt Morgan, Eva, Tina, and Scott."
Damn, that seems like a long list. But why are you working on me the way you are? I understand the first cookbook, I do. But the videos the night of the event and the second cookbook, I don't understand. You aren't trying to get me to be like Catalina, are you? Because I don't have any desire to go down that path, which I think you already know. So what are you doing? He had hoped to get a little further along before they had this discussion, but there was no avoiding it. Ow. You trust me with your girls, don't you? You know I do. Do you believe that I only want what's best for them in everything? I do, and except for the summer camps, you've been really good about getting my input on those ideas. Julia, I only want to support you in whatever you want, and I want Amber and Bella to be happy. The only thing I could imagine making them happier would be their spending more time with you. Everything that we've done for the last couple of months involving you has been simply to give you more options. She gave him a confused look and said, "More options? I don't understand. Even if you stopped right now, we could put out the gravy cookbook, and I think it would do well. But with your work with the food bank fundraiser, and with Scott's video and the TV station video, plus the books and videos for the 2 cookbooks, you are about to become a little better known around here, at least amongst the community that works with food. Instead of being the number 2 chef at one of Asheville's finer restaurants, people are going to actually know who you are. That gives you options. If you want to continue to cook at Malta, then you can. I think the owners have been quite pleased with your getting them the publicity from that night. So your star there is a little brighter, which is great. But given your education, experience, and now a little visibility, there are plenty of other businesses in Western North Carolina that might want a beautiful, skilled, and composed woman such as yourself to work with them. You could work as a specialty food buyer for one of the big restaurant groups or hospitality companies around here. Some of the restaurants here are starting to become well known through reputation alone, but could probably use a good publicist. Biltmore and other big companies around here need directors of food operations. You could always teach at the community college, and I'm sure many other positions could use your talents. Which means that maybe, one day, should you choose to do so, you would have a day job, while the girls are in school, and would be able to spend more time with the 2 people who think you are the most wonderful person on the planet. I tend to agree with them in that you are rather amazing. So, you're doing this for them? I am. This isn't to fill some need that you have to see me become famous like Catalina. What? No. Not at all. Just for the girls, and you. She paused a moment, letting that sink in. Hank was plenty busy already. She knew that once the summer was over, he had used up a lot of his vacation and was working full days for his company and plenty of evenings helping whoever he could at night with either food bank work, cookbook work, or something for the marketing company. And yet, as all this was going on, he was thinking about her girls and by extension, her. She remembered their conversation from several months ago when she thought about him becoming unmarried. She snuggled into him and teased. "You aren't just trying to get to me through the girls, are you?" While he thought he would enjoy getting to her, he refrained from saying anything stupid at that moment. Nope. As tempting as that sounds, and it sounds very tempting, they are not tools to be used. She thought, good answer. Then asked, "What if I were interested in your trying to get to me in some other fashion?" He replied, "Then I would be very interested." Julia stood in front of Hank and held out her glass of wine. She said, "Hold this," and proceeded to hand him her glass. Confused, Hank now had a nearly empty glass in each hand. Julia moved in to sit on his lap, and with 2 free hands, she kissed him passionately, allowing her hands to roam from his waist to his head. Hank didn't resist.
With her in his lap and his hands occupied by the wine glasses, there wasn't much he could do except enjoy and kiss her back. After a minute of that, she eased back and said, "You have no idea how long I've wanted to do that."
"Oh, really?" You know my daughters love you, don't you?"
"I've hoped so, because I love them, too. Ever since Bella held your hand the first time we went hiking, I was intrigued, well, scared really. I wouldn't allow myself to consider a married man, but when they were snuggling next to you during the Pixar movie all those months ago, I was terribly envious, and that sight nearly brought a tear to my eye. I think it was then that I began to allow myself to even consider what Aunt Morgan has been pointing out to me since early this summer."
This time it was Hank that initiated the kiss.
While she kissed him back, he gently tossed the wine glasses into the grass so that his hands would be free. He could feel her smile as she felt one hand on her ass and the other one gently caressing her upper body. Sitting in his lap, she had no difficulty feeling his excitement. She broke the kiss and said, "You have a free bedroom. Why don't the girls and I sleep over tonight? I like the way you think. Are you going to tell them you are sleeping in my bedroom?" "Nope.
You're sleeping on the couch."
"At least that's what we are going to tell them, for now."
"You're comfortable with all of our other guests knowing?"
"I'm comfortable, but they aren't little girls."
"Comfortable?"
"Hell, our guests are the ones that have been encouraging me, even Eva." He smiled at that reply.
"We have a good family." She kissed him again and said, "A great one."
When they went back inside, the girls were busy with their homework, and everyone else seemed busy with something.
The TV wasn't even on.
When Julia told the girls that they were going to be spending the night, they seemed very pleased. When Morgan got off the phone with Julia after being told she and the girls were spending the night, she gave Bill a high five. All of their guests tried to pretend that nothing abnormal was happening, but they, too, were glad to see Hank and Julia coming together. Once Julia had the girls settled in bed, they asked if Hank could come in and kiss them goodnight. Julia knew she was living dangerously. She wondered if she and Hank could really build a life together. But she knew that she was going to try. Watching her girls smile as he kissed them goodnight nearly made her swoon. A little while later, when they felt it was safe to enter his bedroom, Julia said, "You lock the door, and I'll set the alarm." It was a glorious night together, without a lot of sleeping going on. The few hours they did sleep were next to each other. At 5:30 a.m., the alarm went off, and Hank went to the couch, where he was met by Eva. He asked, "What are you doing here?" "I was just making sure that someone, me, you, or Nana was on the couch in the morning in case the girls woke up early." He smiled at his daughter. That was his girl.
He asked, "You don't have a problem with me and Julia being together?"
"No,
Dad. I really don't."
This is probably going to sound terrible, but even if I could go back in time and fix Mom so that she didn't abandon us emotionally, I have to wonder how far back in time I would have to go.
5 years? 8? 10? I don't know, but I know it's a lot.
It just makes me wonder why we weren't enough.
It wasn't just you that she hurt. It was all of us.
Then when I weigh those questions against how happy I see Amber and Bella, and even Nana, I wonder. Even with a magic time machine, knowing what I know, would I make the effort?
I don't think I would. I've enjoyed these last few months tremendously.
I don't like how we got here, but all of us being jumbled together working on the things we've been working on, I wouldn't trade that for anything. I feel sad for you and Mom, and to some degree for Nana, but all of us here are going to be fine. I hope you and Julia work out.
Everyone does.
Thanks, baby.
That helps me to hear that.
Since they were up, they went to the kitchen to make breakfast, because the girls would need to get up to go to their house to get ready for school. Either the smells or the sounds from the kitchen began waking up the house. Marlies was the first to enter the kitchen area, followed by Julia, who walked up to Hank and gave him a long hug and kiss on the neck. Though unintentional, she timed it perfectly so that Amber saw her. Amber grinned and trotted over to Hank and gave him a long hug and kiss on the cheek, then she did the same for her mom. Julia saw Amber's smile and knew things were going to be okay. Marlies thought so, too. After Julia and the girls left, Merle said, "Hank, I'm going back to Spain. I don't know how long I'll be there, a few days or a few weeks, but I am coming back. I need to check on my wayward daughter. She's been working from there, and I need to make some decisions about my place and my things. I don't approve of her behavior over the last couple of years, and especially last summer, but she is my daughter.
I hope you understand." "Mom, there's nothing to understand. You do what you need to do. I told you that you have a place here, always. So, promise me that you won't be gone too long. All of us, including your new granddaughters, will miss you. And I'll miss them." When Kat was little, I felt like a mother hen with one chick to look over. Now, I still feel like a mother hen, but my number has grown to include you and my new family. I'll always love my first chick, but I love all of my others just as much. You don't have grandchildren yet, so I'm not sure you understand, but I need to do this. I think I do, some. Oh, just so you know, Mom, that first floor guest suite that you've been staying in? It's yours. This house is yours. Don't worry about living anywhere but here, okay? We want and need you back. I know, and thank you. I want to be here, too. When Samuel was alive, I didn't mind the distance between our families as much. I missed all of you, but I had him. I wish I had moved closer years ago, but honestly, at the time, Catalina was so busy that I didn't want to interfere. I see that was a mistake now. I won't miss watching these grandbabies growing up. I'll be back soon, either before or right after Christmas." Merle did return to Spain and tried to spend time with Kat, who was very busy building her new show with Lorenzo. It was going well, but she didn't have a lot of time for her mother. Merle's never warmed up to Lorenzo, but she was at least cordial to him because she knew that her daughter needed this show to do well. It needed to do well, because while the episodes of her Barcelona show proved to be extremely popular on the stations for which they were scheduled, thanks to the publicity of a topless Catalina, her old sponsors were not eager to renew her programming. Consequently, she needed her new show to succeed. Kat was stunned to learn that her mother planned to sell her apartment. Merle's would get a good price and be able to bank enough that if she ever wanted to visit her hometown, she could just rent a nice place for weeks or months at a time. She would reserve enough money for her to be buried in Spain, next to Samuel, but she intended to live in the United States, with her family. It would take time to make the immigration paperwork happen, but it would happen eventually. Kat asked, "Why didn't you move there sooner, while I was in Pittsburgh? Your father only passed away 5 years ago. It took me a while to get over that. Also, in the last few years, it isn't like I would have seen much of you anyway." Would I? That irritated Kat, not because it wasn't true, but because it was. Kat wouldn't let it go, though. "So, now I'm here and you're moving there. If you stayed, at least you could spend some time with me. Dear, I do love you. I do. But I could stay here hoping to see you a few hours each week, or each month, while you are distracted by whatever you have going on, or I could live there and see most of my family every single day. Know this, I haven't eaten breakfast or dinner alone in months. Months? I won't go back to missing my family when I can be with them all the time." "But I'm your family." "You are part of my family, who is too busy right now to spend quality time with me. Let me know when you have less going on, and I'll come to spend as much time with you as you can give me. That may not happen for 7 or 8 months. Which is exactly why I'm going back to Asheville until your schedule calms down." Merle's knew that 7 or 8 months could easily turn into 17 or 18. She asked Kat, "Are you taking any time off for Christmas?" "Lorenzo and I are taping a Christmas show, and we've been asked to host a children's hospital event on Christmas Eve." Merle's nodded her head. Just as she suspected. She could stick around to spend a Christmas afternoon with a distracted Catalina, or she could spend a glorious week with her family in Asheville that would be on vacation the week before Christmas, and another one with all of them after Christmas. That was a fairly easy decision. When Merle's returned, she brought several boxes of her favorite things with her. When she showed them to Hank, he knew what they needed to do. She had a small case of ornaments, and Hank brought them out for Amber and Bella to help Merle's put them on the tree.
Marily's was beaming when they finished. On Christmas Day, Julia and the girls woke up and spent the morning at Morgan and Bill's, but then all of them went to Hank's for a big lunch and to open presents there. Before they returned to Morgan's house, Hank said to Julia, "I hope that next year you and the girls are waking up here." She replied, "I'd like that." For the girls, it was beginning to feel like home, too. While Kat clearly burnt her bridges with her family, she sunk the boats to her Pittsburgh area sponsors. It would have been useless to put forth the effort to rebuild those sponsor relationships and decided to go where the money was readily available, which was Lorenzo and his villa projects, effectively abandoning her Pittsburgh base. They quickly pulled together a Spain-based crew and started filming with a Spanish audience in mind. Lorenzo, already extremely popular in Spain from his soccer, football, career, was a hit next to Catalina, a hometown, or home country girl, returning home. They had good screen chemistry and their show quickly morphed from just a few episodes to a small production company that developed episodes for NBC Universal in Spain. It did so well that NBC Universal wanted them to manage and appear in several different shows that would be broadcast across many of NBC Universal's Spanish networks, in addition to their network in Spain. Telemundo in America and Central and South America were included. They even asked Kat to do a show where she was allowed to guest cook with many chefs in Spain's Michelin-starred restaurants. While she had fun with Lorenzo, and that show made them a lot of money, cooking with those brilliant chefs was her favorite. So not only did Kat get her show, but she got several and the money that came with it. Even splitting it with Lorenzo, she made what she would have earned from a top show in a US-based network, for a while. Even though she and Lorenzo had great chemistry, they were not destined to be a couple. Why? He wanted a family, and at nearly 50, Kat wasn't about to give him one. His ex-fiancée burnt down his mansion upon seeing the pictures of him and Kat. Her father, happening to be the governor of the Spanish province where the arson occurred, limited any fallout. But Lorenzo wasn't getting any younger, so he found and married a gorgeous woman that could give him what he wanted. That changed the chemistry of the shows with Kat because the sexual tension died off almost immediately since his new wife forced him to sign an extremely punitive prenup. As a result, their show kind of died off, forcing Kat to develop something new. No longer did she have the easy-to-produce shows along the Spanish coast, but she was doing more cooking travel shows in the countries where she had quickly become popular. The contracts were still lucrative, but the extensive travel was hard. She eventually moved to the capital of Latin America, Miami, where she was considered a celebrity, but by then she was hoping to be considered more for her talents and experience. Given her age, she had become that mamacita. It was one thing to use her looks and figure to build her career and cachet, but trying to maintain it in Miami, amongst so many beautiful people, was a challenge. Having always had a lush body, it was harder for her to stand out amongst the young bodies in Miami. She was always worried about her weight, firmness, and age, even though she really didn't have anything to worry about. After a couple of years of this, she had plenty of money in the bank and no shortage of men that wanted to share her bed, but she was terribly lonely, even the few times when she was in bed with someone. Eva and Eric would fly down and spend a week each year with her. Marily's would usually try to spend 2 or 3. With Kat's heavy travel schedule, it was the best any of them could arrange. After moving to Miami, Kat had a lot of time to reminisce alone. Marily's, during one of her visits, encouraged Kat to rewatch those first few episodes from the filming that made Hank look bad. They did it together. The combination of missing Hank, missing her family, and seeing those episodes with fresh eyes meant that by the end of the 3rd episode that they watched, Kat had tears streaming down her face. She made herself watch the next 3 episodes before she tried to send Hank a text, preceding her wanting to call him, to apologize. She was stunned to realize that her number was still blocked. She had to use Marily's phone instead. She texted to Hank, "You were right. They made you look foolish. I'll be forever sorry that I didn't protect someone I loved so dearly, you. Please forgive me." 10 minutes later it was her phone that pinged, "Apology accepted. Hope you are well. Safe journeys." She told Marily's, "Hug him for me, Mama. Tell him that I love him and that I'm sorry." "I will." Chapter 6. During Eva's most recent visit with Kat, near Christmas, she brought with her Todd, her fiancé, so that her mother could meet him. Kat immediately liked him. Eva and Todd planned to marry in early June, nearly 6 months away.
That date was not conducive to Kat helping Eva plan the wedding. Of course, most dates wouldn't be. Eva did invite her to help, but they both knew that would be impossible. Kat did the honorable thing and thanked her for the offer but suggested that she couldn't be of much help. She promised to be in Asheville early on the week of the wedding. As the wedding approached, Kat was in South America recording several food shows and travel shows, much like the Anthony Bourdain series, but for Spanish-speaking audiences. Unfortunately, rather than great places in great cities, she was being sent into much smaller towns to try to discover new places to put on the map. It was much harder travel. She did have one good experience when she was sent to Mendoza, Argentina to do a show in a winery restaurant. She stayed at a nearby luxury ranch and met the owner, Matthias, who was at least a decade older than her, but was very handsome and used the magnetism of a wealthy rancher that had seen and done it all. They spent their first few evenings together telling each other stories about their work and travels. Whenever she wasn't filming, she was spending time with him and found the first real connection with someone since leaving Hank, including some decent, almost meaningful, sex for a change. When it was time for her to move on to her next stop, Santiago, Chile, Matthias flew her in his private plane through the Uspallata Pass and over the Andes on the way to Santiago. The views were breathtaking. He invited her to come be a CK and stay forever. Needing to feel some connection to someone in her life, she seriously considered it. 2 weeks before the wedding, she was in Colombia in the middle of the jungle near the Amazon. Contact had been made with an indigenous tribe that was supposed to cap her season. She was expected to film the way they prepare several meals using not much more than mud stoves and homemade knives and utensils. Instead of being a travel and cooking show, this one felt more like it belonged on National Geographic. She was joking with their guide about a leopard jumping out of the jungle until she saw that he and several others were armed just in case. The first 2 days of filming went well, but then the slow steady rain turned into a relentless torrent. The local guide that had been taking her filming crew from the small village where they stayed to the tribe locations didn't show up. Each day the rains continued but no filming was completed. She was supposed to leave the Saturday before the wedding, but they begged her to stay an extra day or two to complete the filming. Reluctantly, she agreed. The old, remote hotel didn't have an internet connection, but there was a small internet cafe that had slow internet service. Of course, there was no cell service on the edge of the Amazon. She used the cafe to update her email and get messages out. While there, she saw on the news that the rains were beginning to wash out some of the roads. She realized that if that happened to her, she'd never make it to the wedding. Even though it was late in the afternoon, she immediately found their driver and demanded that he take her back to Bogota. She was getting the hell out of there, no matter what. When their Colombian host tried to protest, she told him to sue her. Soon, everyone in the film crew was joining her in leaving. The 11-hour ride through the monsoon, the mud, and the almost impassable routes to Bogota was the longest of her life. It was a harrowing ride, like something out of a disaster movie, and only pure exhaustion allowed her to sleep maybe an hour between that small village and arriving at their hotel in Bogota early the next morning. Never again, she told herself. I was much happier with my Pittsburgh audience. Then she remembered, again, for the 100th time that there was no going back there. She showered, slept a couple of hours, and left the hotel to tackle the Bogota airport, where her situation worsened because the entire airport was on strike. She was supposed to arrive in Asheville that afternoon, but now she didn't know when she would leave Bogota, much less arrive there. Everyone she called from the airlines to her manager at NBC Universal, who couldn't believe she left a live shoot, seemed either unwilling or unable to help. Worried about what being late would do to her relationship with Eva, she texted the one person she had always been able to count on. Please. I need your help. It's urgent. Hank was surprised when the text came through. He knew that Kat was supposed to be arriving today. The girls had prepared many things for her that everyone hoped she would like. Hey, Kat. What's going on? Oh, thank you for calling me. I know you probably don't want to lift a finger for me. He interrupted, just get to it, Kat. What do you need? Feeling slightly rebuffed by his tone, she pressed ahead, I need help getting out of Bogota. Can your travel person put me in touch with whoever arranges your company's private jet charters? It will need to be an airport besides the main one.
There is a general strike going on here and no flights are leaving.
Sure. Give me a few minutes.
She dreaded the likely answer.
Medellin and Cali were 8 and 9 hours away by car on a dry day.
She desperately needed something to go right for her. She was cursing herself for accepting this last assignment and cursing her producer at NBC Universal for putting her into the middle of nowhere, knowing that her daughter was getting married. It reminded her that she was just an asset to them, not a person. After a few more minutes of thought, she was cursing her for accepting the assignment so close to the wedding. Why would she expect her employers to protect her time if she had been unwilling to do so? It was an eye-opening moment regarding her own priorities. She wouldn't make a mistake like that again. 15 minutes later, her phone rang. It was Hank. Take a cab to the Guaymaral Airport, just north of town. A plane will be there in a couple of hours to take you to Miami. If you would like, I can arrange another plane from Miami to Asheville, or you can find a ticket on your own. Oh, that airport is tiny, so don't freak out when they drop you off. The jet charter service will begin calling your cell in another hour to locate you there and take you to the lounge to wait for your plane.
Thank you, Hank.
I'll pay you back as soon as I get to Asheville.
I know. No rush. Be safe and have a good flight. Everyone is looking forward to seeing you. Me too.
Other than exchanging those few texts a couple of years ago, she hadn't spoken to Hank in 4 years. The love of her life and not one word for 4 years, and at the drop of a hat, he helps her out. She was not going to relive her poor choices during this upcoming week, but on those lonely nights over the last few years, she was mentally kicking herself. To get everything she ever wanted, all she did was give up everyone she ever loved, or that loved her. It was a poor trade. How had she managed to lose sight of those that were important to her? When did that happen? Why was she not defending them to the death instead of gazing into the mirror? Once airborne, the flight to her home in Miami was easy, and given where she had been 24 hours previously, she was extremely grateful. She caught the first direct flight the next morning to Asheville, which had her arriving just before lunch. She loved Asheville and had missed it, but like her husband, now ex-husband, she had abandoned it, too, 4 years ago. When she sent Eva her new flight information, Eva had texted back that she would meet her at baggage claim. At the Asheville airport, after clearing the secure area, when Kat turned the corner to walk towards the baggage carousel, she heard, "And Kat." And Kat. Turning around, she saw 2 young teens walking toward her with their arms open for a hug. Merle's was right behind them, grinning. Kat was stunned to see their approach. Merle's had told Kat that she had grown very close to the girls. Apparently, they were not holding any grudges against her. After she received hugs from all 3 of them, Amber said, "Nana has been teaching us Spanish." Bella added, "We've been watching your travel shows to help." Merle's was acting like a proud grandmother after they finished. She said, "These 2 are probably your biggest fans, after me, of course." "Thanks, Mama, and thanks to both of you, young ladies." She didn't know Amber from Bella. She asked, "Where's Eva?" "Getting your bags. Let's go." There were happy tears shared by all when Eva hugged her mother again. "I've missed you, Mom." "Me too, sweetie." "I've missed you, too." Once they had Kat's bags in the SUV, there was much catching up to do. During a brief lull in the conversation, Bella asked, "And Kat, are you going to come with us to Spain next summer?" "You're going to Spain?" Daddy and Nana said that after I turned 13, we could go. Nana is going to give us a tour. And Morgan and Uncle Bill are coming, too, so can you come? It stunned her for just a moment to hear Bella call Hank, Daddy. She was aware of his marrying Julia and adopting the girls, but it was still a shocker for her to hear that word coming from the mouth of a child that wasn't hers. She said, "Oh, I wish I could, sweetie, but your mom or dad would have to invite me first. My being there might make them uncomfortable." Merle's and Eva scoffed at the same time. Eva said, "Todd and I would like to go, but we'll have to see what we can work out." They drove to Malta for lunch. Kat asked, "Isn't this where Julia works?"
Merleys replied, yep. She's still here.
The girls just grinned. Once inside, they were seated at a big, round table, where Morgan was waiting.
A few minutes later, Julia and a stylishly dressed older woman approached the table. Julia said, "Hi, Kat. It's so good to see you again." Thanks, Julia. I'm just glad it's under better circumstances than the last time." Julia simply smiled in reply. Kat asked, "Are you working today?" "Oh, I'm working, but I don't work in the kitchen anymore. Mrs. Rousseau and her husband now own 4 restaurants, and I'm their buyer for all of them. I made the change a little over 2 years ago. It means I get to spend more time with my family since my hours are better. I still cook from time to time to help out, but that isn't very often." Mrs. Rousseau wanted to ask you something. Renee Rousseau said, "Hi, Kat. It's a pleasure to meet you. This fall will be the 5th year that one of our restaurants hosts a benefit for the local food bank that Morgan runs. It would mean a lot to those sitting at this table and everyone at our company if you would be our celebrity chef for the evening. As I think you know, it's for a good cause, and you would help us raise a lot of money for charity." "You want me?" "I'm barely known in Spain, much less here in Asheville. I appreciate the offer, but are you sure I would be a good fit?" "We're sure. I've seen many of your shows where you were a guest chef at those Michelin-starred restaurants, and, of course, your previous success on PBS. We'd love to have you. We do it in October now, when the fall crowds are here in town. You don't have to give me an answer today, but I hope you'll consider it." Kat was stunned. "Sure. I'll let you know soon. Thank you." "Actually, thank you." Julia sat and joined them at the table. Eva asked, "Mama, how long are you staying in Asheville?" "About a week, I think." Merle said, "I was hoping you could stay a little longer. While I'm overwhelmed with my greetings so far, I don't want to overstay my welcome." Julia replied, "Nonsense. Stay as long as you like." That comment surprised Kat and made her feel very welcomed, almost like she was coming home. They had a great lunch, after which Julia returned to her office, and Morgan drove back to the food bank. Back in the SUV, Eva said, "I want you to see my new office." They drove several minutes away from downtown to an older neighborhood that had a large Victorian home on a sizable lot with a large shed in the back. When they walked in, Scott and Tina greeted her with a baby on Tina's hip. Kat's mouth dropped open at seeing the little boy. She said, "Oh, Tina, Scott. I didn't know you had a baby. I'm so happy for the two of you." Tina said, "Thanks, Kat. Once our business picked up, I could cut back and spend more time being a mom. I'm loving it. Nana comes over and helps look after Samuel from time to time so I can work a little more, but it's been really good." "Samuel. Did Mama tell you that was my father's name?" Scott replied, "We know. Your mom has been such a tremendous help to all of us, that Tina and I decided to name him Samuel, for her. If it had been a girl, it would have been named Merleys." "Oh. I'm not certain how to respond to that. Other than thank you. I'm sure Papa would have been touched, as I'm sure Mama is." Merleys put her arm around Kat. "I'm very pleased. More than I can express. It's like getting another grandbaby. Sam makes number 5. When Merleys picked up Sam, he squealed with delight. He loved whenever his Nana came to visit. Eva, Tina, and Scott showed Kat around. The large shed in the back was Scott's studio and was set up to film small scenes that they used in special advertisements. Most of his work was shot on location or in a professional studio in town. The business office was in the front room of the Victorian home. Eva usually worked from there. Scott was slowly restoring the old home. He wasn't in any hurry and guessed that he had several more years of work to complete it, perhaps sooner if Hank continued to help out. Scott said, "Kat, it was your daughter that kicked the business into high gear. We basically worked for Hank the first several months until the Got Gravy cookbook started selling. Eva had the great idea of sending several books to a certain redneck comedian that lives near Atlanta and asked if he could mention the book before a show or two since it was for charity. He liked the cookbook so much, or well, he liked the picture and the title so much that he mentioned it before each show that season. All of a sudden, people wanted to know more about the author, Julia, the food bank, and the company that put the cookbook together. Julia's Mediterranean cookbook did well also, and things have been steady after that. Not gangbusters, but good. Tina and I are happy. Kat gave them a sad smile because she was missing all of this. These were her friends, whom she had treated badly, but she was very happy for them. Scott, Tina, I just want to say how sorry I am for the way. Scott put up his hand. Nope. Don't want to hear it. Don't worry about it, Kat. Maybe how we arrived here was a little rocky for a while, but we love it here. Working with Eva. Seeing Nana almost every day. Barbecues on the weekend with family. And of course, Samuel.
I'm sorry that you went through what you did, but I wouldn't change anything about our lives right now. Then he smiled and said, except to maybe give Samuel a little sister.
Tina asked, would you like to hold him?
A teary-eyed Kat nodded her head up and down.
When Tina handed the little toddler to Kat, he just smiled and jabbered.
Then seeing her dangly earrings, he tried to reach for them, which made everyone laugh. They spent a good portion of the afternoon on the back deck catching up and telling the girls stories from some of their crazier filming episodes from several years ago. Merleys was enjoying the scene. Her daughter was there, with them, all of them. It was the happiest she had been in years. Then it was time to go to Hank and Julia's home, what had been Kat and Hank's vacation house. Scott and his family would be joining them for dinner. The closer and closer they got to the house, the quieter and more nervous Kat became. It would be the first time that she had laid eyes on Hank since that Labor Day weekend almost 4 years ago. She wondered, what will he say? How will he act? Will I be welcomed? Kat saw a little red Mini Cooper-esque convertible parked on the driveway. Eva said, that's Nana's car. Mama. You drive that? I wanted something small and sporty. Driving in Barcelona would have gotten me killed, but around here, I enjoy it. Some mornings I'll get up and drive up or down the Blue Ridge Parkway for an hour or two. It's beautiful, and that's how Eva met Todd. We were out driving one weekend morning and found his family's apple and peach orchard. We stopped for some pastries and coffee, and Eva practically tackled him on the spot. I did not. It was more like the other way around. Merleys just smiled. The girls giggled. They liked Todd, too. Kat was slow getting out of the vehicle, and as everyone made their way inside, she was almost reluctant to go in. Merleys whispered to her, it's going to be okay, Catalina. You'll see. Through the open door, she could smell something cooking, something with saffron. Whatever it was smelled wonderful. She could see Hank hugging everyone as they entered. He still looked good. It didn't look like he had changed at all. After watching him hug Merleys, there was nobody between her and him. Kat wanted to run the other way. She could see that everyone else had stopped and turned to watch. Hank opened his arms for her to come inside for a hug and Kat nearly fell into him. She went from 0 to sobbing in under half a second. He simply held her and let her go. After nearly 20 seconds he could hear her mumbling something into his shirt. He asked, what? A few seconds later she tried again. I'm so sorry. I've missed you so much. Oh God, how I have missed you. I was so stupid. Unbelievably and unforgivably stupid. I'll be paying for that stupidity the rest of my life, but please forgive me. Please forgive me for being such a self-centered, selfish bitch. She wasn't certain exactly where that came from, but her loneliness of the past several years coupled with her regret over how she walked away from her family, especially given the happiness her family all seemed to share without her around to enjoy it, had finally bubbled to the surface. Shhhhhh. It's okay, Kat. Everything is okay. You're forgiven. I already told you that. I know, but I needed to. I don't know. I needed to see you say it. I need to know that you mean it. I need to believe it. He squeezed her again. I mean it. From my heart to yours, all is forgiven.
You could not be more loved or welcome than you are right now.
That set off the waterworks and the deep heaving sobs, again. This time, she felt more arms wrapping around her. First Merle's, then Eva, then the girls tried to squeeze in.
Hank said, I told you we were looking forward to seeing you. No. You said, everyone is looking forward to seeing you. I was afraid you meant everyone but you.
I was including myself in that group, too.
Come on, let's get you freshened up. I just put dinner in the oven.
Eva accompanied Kat to the bathroom and Hank returned to the kitchen with Merle's. The girls went to their rooms to change.
In the kitchen, Hank said, I know you, Mom. You're about to burst from happiness right now.
You're right.
I'll be even happier when Eric and everyone else arrive later.
The only way my life could be any better than that is if Samuel were still alive and here with us.
They were joined by everyone else a few minutes later. When Kat joined them, she asked, Hank, when did you learn to cook? I do a little from time to time. I watched you for decades, and then Julia taught me a few things. Why didn't you ever cook for me?
He replied, well, I'm cooking something special for you right now, but back in the day, your viewers wanted to watch you, not me. With a sad smile, she said, we should have cooked more together.
He just nodded. In Spanish, Bella asked, Aunt Kat, will you watch your Buenos Aires episode with us?
Merle said, that's their favorite episode because of the tango scene.
They've been dying for you to come here so you can watch it with them. Kat laughed, you know you can't film anything from there without including at least one tango scene. That was a lot of fun.
She let them lead her to the family room.
Over the next hour or two, the rest of the gang began trickling in.
Morgan, Bill, and Todd, who made Kat happy just by watching him, and Eva together. Then Scott, Tina, Sam, and Eric arrived. When Eric entered the house, Kat went through another crying fit. Even though she had seen him 6 months earlier, he looked different, bigger, stronger, more like an adult than just a young man. Her baby was growing up, and she was missing it. When Julia arrived, she helped Hank finish preparing dinner. They served up 2 large batches of paella, seafood and non-seafood, along with a salad and other sides.
Paella was one of Kat's favorite dishes.
When they were all squeezed into the dining table, Hank stood and tapped the side of his wineglass to offer a toast. He said, I'm so extremely pleased that my entire family is here with us tonight.
Kat, we're especially glad you were able to make it. Now we are complete. To family. Everyone echoed him, to family. Kat had something she needed to say and stood. She offered, I want to thank all of you for today.
Now I know what the prodigal son must have felt.
Thank you all.
For welcoming me back and being so kind to someone who lost their way for far too long.
This is the best day that I've had in many, many years. I love you all.
Everyone enjoyed their dinner, and Kat was pulled into various conversations all night long. After Hank and Julia cleaned up, she poured 2 glasses of a nice Oloroso sherry for him. As Hank walked outside, he drew Kat's attention and held up the extra glass. She nodded, and a few minutes later she joined him on the patio. She thanked him for the sherry and took a sip. She said, thank you for helping me get out of Colombia.
The weather and the strike caught me by surprise.
I just knew I would be excommunicated from our family if I didn't get here until late in the week, or heaven forbid, miss the wedding completely because the roads to and from the jungle were washed out. It was nearly a disaster.
I'm glad you made it out. We've all been looking forward to seeing you. I see that, and it means everything to me.
I missed all of you when I was away, but being here today has highlighted for me how much I missed being a part of your lives. About the only friends I have in my life right now are the friendly faces on the production crews that change from week to week.
That is to say, I have nobody. Hank offered, I'm sorry to hear that because I know you love the work. I did. I'm not so sure anymore.
This last series of episodes has been taking me to the small towns and jungles, literally, of Latin America and has me seriously questioning what I'm doing. I'm told that the episodes have rated well, but I'm not enjoying it.
Mom and the girls have been watching all of your episodes. We bought a satellite dish so we could receive and record them.
She smiled. I'm still stunned by that. Given what I did, I'm almost surprised by Mama, but I'm blown away that Julia lets the girls watch. You are loved.
Don't forget that. It's that simple.
She paused for a few moments, gathering the strength to dive headfirst into the unknown, not certain if she should bring up what she needed to say. Hank, I know it's all water under the bridge now, and you probably won't believe me, but I swear on everything in my life that means anything, I did not sleep with Lorenzo before you had the divorce papers delivered to me. I know it's well in the past, but you deserve to know that. It was Hank's turn to pause and think. He replied, I don't really want to drag up the past, either, but I do believe you. However, Kat, also, I know you, or used to. That situation was probably very electric for you. He was a good-looking guy, and the two of you were probably teasing each other a lot. You already were during the previous weeks of filming. Can you honestly sit there and tell me that had you not been served, you absolutely would not have screwed him or done something else bad before you left his yacht?
Honestly? I don't know. I'm not so naive as to say absolutely. But I will tell you this. I didn't desire him. I desired you, not him. And you know what I'm talking about, because when you are committed to someone, you, Hank, have no desire for any other female. That was me at the time. I was wrong. It looked bad, very bad, and was incredibly stupid. I wasn't completely innocent, because I was trying to get the deal done, by being sexy, without the sex. But honest to God, I wasn't planning to sleep with him. He said, that's where I wonder if your priorities shifted before you met Sheila and Felicia, or after, because the Kat I knew a decade ago wouldn't have put herself in that situation. You would have recognized how bad that looked, instead of allowing yourself to be blinded by the business opportunity. Can you imagine the fight we would have had if I went with you to Barcelona and you were hanging around and flirting with the soccer team instead of me at the club? Or even worse, tried to tell me not to go with you to the club? She sighed, I know, and you're right. 100%. For some reason I didn't just want my own show, I needed to get to the top, and I was willing to do damn near anything to achieve it. Even though I wasn't thinking it at the time, all I had to do was sacrifice my family and any sort of decent personal life to accomplish that. Now, I have plenty of money, some fame, some infamy, and nobody I want to share my life with. If I could go back in time 6 or 7 years to our being in Pittsburgh, and never achieve any more than what I had then, I would do it tomorrow. He asked, so, all that glitters wasn't gold? You know the answer to that. A couple of years ago, I was mortified when I rewatched those episodes that embarrassed you. I'm so sorry for that. Truly. Then when I tried to text you to set up an apology call and my number was still blocked, it was like I was completely cut off from you, and I was the one that put myself in that situation. Had Mama not been with me and let me use her phone to text you, I don't know how I would have survived the week, probably by blowing up Eva or Eric's phone, or flying here. I appreciated that apology. It was important to me that we could both see what had happened there. By then I was married to Julia, so my life was improving, but that you would apologize meant a great deal to me. Thank you. I've missed you, too. She asked, did you know the girls invited me to go to Spain with all of you? Of course, all of us hope you'll go. If you can't or aren't interested, I understand. We were planning on renting your apartment in Barcelona through Airbnb. He chuckled, then followed up with, we've been renting your home, our old home, in Pittsburgh whenever we visit there. How many homes do you own now? She scoffed, 4. There is my current place in Miami, where I rarely sleep and have zero emotional attachment to. Then there are the other 3, which I couldn't let go of. I've not been able to bring myself to sell our old home in Pittsburgh, even though I haven't been there in years. I like the apartment in Barcelona that I redid with Scott and Tina so much that I wanted to keep it for me as a long-term vacation home or investment. Then I bought Mama's apartment, including most of her furnishings, when she sold it through a third party. I was in such a funk when she decided to sell that I couldn't lose that piece of my family. I had already lost you and what made our old house a home. I've been hanging on to our old apartment, too. I've lost the people in my life that mean anything to me, so I held on to the properties that held so many memories. That's interesting.
I'm not sure Mom knows about your keeping her house.
I never told her.
When I'm in Barcelona, I usually stay there so the nicer apartment can be rented out.
Kat asked, how long will you vacation with the girls in Spain? A month, maybe more, was his reply. Really? When we were there filming, you worked a little, but if you are all over the country, will you be able to stay connected to work?
He looked at her and smiled. I'm retiring. Nobody but Julia knows this yet, but our company is being bought. All of my stock options are about to be cashed in at a premium, so I'll be okay financially, not rich, but comfortable.
Robert's ecstatic. He is going to be rich, or even richer. He's coming to the wedding, by the way. As for Spain, I could stay all summer, but Julia needs to get back. When we get back from that trip, I think I'm going to help Scott finish their house and help Morgan run the food bank. I may even take over managing it when she's ready to stop in a few years. Julia's planning on using the Spain trip to line up a few new suppliers for their restaurants. I can probably help with that. I know dozens spread all across Spain. I'll give her a list and maybe she can visit a few during the vacation. I was hoping you would say that.
I'm also hoping you can introduce her to some of them, in person.
Kat said, if I come, I'll do that.
God, I'm so envious of the two of you. Just then there was a tap on the patio door and Julia brought the girls outside.
Good night, Aunt Kat, they said in unison, and then hugged her. It was very sweet. Eva was right behind them.
Mom, we need to go if we're going to meet Todd at his parents' house for breakfast.
Kat marveled at how Eva seemed to glow when Todd was around.
She had been smiling since Kat met her at the airport.
Kat chided, breakfast? You know I don't look my best in the morning. Eva rolled her eyes. Mom, when have you not looked gorgeous? You could roll out of bed, and you would still be the prettiest woman they've ever seen. She replied, that's not true. They've already seen you. Eva snorted, thanks, Mom.
I don't quite agree with you, but Todd does, and that's all that matters. The girls had gone back inside, so Kat told Julia, I just told Hank how much I envy the two of you.
She replied, you don't have to feel that way. Your entire family is here. You could be, too. You'd be welcomed with open arms. When I told the owner about you, I didn't even have to suggest you be a guest chef. She was already asking me to ask you.
You may not be a household name here like you were in parts of Spain, but I'll bet you could have some nice success around here and still spend time with your family.
You wouldn't mind? Me? Why would I mind? I'm sure I could learn a lot from you. My daughters think you are amazing and can't wait to hang out with you some this week.
You know the rest of your family, even this goober that I'm married to, loves you. If you stay away from here, it isn't because you aren't wanted or loved.
Eva hugged her mother. See, Mom, the only person keeping you away is you. Kat knew that was true. She just needed to find a way to make it work. We'll talk about it this week. Kat and Eva wished everyone a good night and went to Eva's apartment, where she and Todd would live for a while after they returned from their honeymoon. After they had gone, Julia asked Hank, what do you think? Will she move here? I have no idea. I'm not really in tune with the way she thinks anymore. Julia snorted. Okay, husband, humor me. Before Kat lost her mind for a few years, what would the old cat have done? Easy. She would be wherever her family was. Good.
I'll tell Mrs. Rousseau that she should tentatively plan on Kat being here, and I'll get Uncle Bill to start talking to some of the realtors he knows from when he delivered mail to start looking for a nice house for her.
Teasingly, Hank asked, what? She isn't going to live here, with us?
I'd be fine with that for a couple of months, but I don't need the competition. I'd feel better if it were during the winter when it's too cool for her to lay out by the pool. Oh, and I can guarantee you that if she ever does spend the night here, on the first night that she's here, I'll be drugging everyone but you and her, and she will hear me lay claim to my man in the bedroom, very vocally.
Am I clear? Crystal. You know I only have eyes for you. You'd better. Don't forget that I'm an expert with knives and could turn you into a eunuch with a mere flick of my wrist.
Well, don't ever give me a reason to go looking somewhere else. Come with me, babe, and I'll remind you why that will never happen.
Julia was a passionate and giving lover. He knew that wasn't anything he needed to worry about. She demonstrated that night why Hank would always want to be with her. Eva and Kat got up very early to make it to the 7:30 a.m. breakfast at the Parton's orchard. Ben and Marjorie Parton were gracious hosts and had a huge spread of food for such a small group of people. Plenty of homemade preserves from fruits grown on the farm were served, and Kat enjoyed those very much and appreciated their efforts. After breakfast, Kat was given a tour of the orchard by the rest of them, and Eva pointed out the spot on the property where she and Todd planned to build a house soon. Eva said, "Daddy's going to help us with a down payment to get started. Todd and I hope to make you a grandmother very, very soon, so you need to think about how you are going to be here for that. I'm going to want my mom nearby." Kat heard her loud and clear. While the rest of the week couldn't quite match her first day in Asheville, Kat had an incredible week. She spent a lot of time with Eva, who seemed comfortable and content in her own skin, given the life change that was about to happen. Kat was soaring on the inside just to watch the confident woman that Eva had become. Merle's was usually nearby also, though she occasionally needed to visit Scott and Tina to help out with Samuel. Kat saw Eric every night over at Hank and Julia's house, where she was always welcomed. For Kat, she was trying to wrap her mind around a move to Asheville, a place she had always liked, not quite certain how to accomplish that other than diving right in. On Friday, the rehearsal and rehearsal dinner were nice and simple. The dinner was at one of Julia's restaurants. One of Eva's girlfriends from college came in to be a bridesmaid, along with Amber and Bella. Tina was her maid of honor. On Saturday, before the wedding in the bride's room, waiting for the ceremony to start, all of the bridesmaids were there along with Merle's, Julia, and Kat. Mother and daughter were both glowing as the time approached. A nervous Eva wasn't saying a lot, but there were plenty of heartfelt looks between her and the other ladies in the room. Morgan and Bill were seated next to Merle's as honorary grandparents. Julia and Kat were seated next to each other as Hank walked Eva down the aisle. Kat wanted to cheer when Hank answered the familiar question with, "Her mother and I." She was thinking, "That's right. She's ours. We did it. He and I raised that wonderful woman." To that point in her life, it was the greatest success she had known. That was probably when the last few years really sunk in for her. For some reason, she had begun measuring success using the wrong measuring stick. Having watched Eva for the last week, she at least felt that she had done something meaningful in her life. She was envious of Hank getting a second chance to do it again with Amber and Bella. Then she thought how lucky she was that they wanted to spend so much time during the past week with her. It made her grateful. Hank was busy at the reception, having many women he needed and wanted to dance with. As Hank mentioned, Robert and his wife were there, and Robert took the time to dance with Kat, which allowed them to catch up with each other. Todd's family was from the rural areas of western North Carolina, which made for an interesting mix, but they were friendly and earnest, and to Todd's relief, no fiddles were brought out during the reception. Eva's constant happiness had rubbed off on Kat, who was as happy as she had been in over a decade. During the entire reception she was made to feel welcome, when a week ago while worrying about how she would get out of the jungle, she was just as worried as to how she would be received that week. Now she knew. She knew what she wanted to do. She just needed to make it happen. Eva pulled Kat with her to help her change into her going-away dress before she and Todd made their mad dash to the awaiting limo and their hotel before flying to St. Martin the next day for their honeymoon. Kat helped her change and would take care of her wedding dress later. As they left the room, Eva told her mother, "I love you, Mom. Thank you for this week. It couldn't have been any better." Kat struggled to contain her emotions. "For me too, sweetie. I've been excited for today, but I've not wanted this week to end. Move here, Mom. Then it won't end." Outside, the guests had assembled to shower, pelt, the bride and groom with birdseed. Kat accompanied Eva to meet up with her new husband, Todd. Just before they dashed to the limo, Eva leaned into Kat to tell her one more thing. "Mom, you need to move here soon. I'm pregnant." Kat looked at Todd, who knew Eva was going to do that, and he just smiled at Kat and nodded.
Then they ran through the showers of birdseed and into the awaiting car, which whisked them away.
Hank and Julia, who also knew about Eva's secret, joined Kat.
Hank hugged the still stunned Kat and said, "Surprise!
We're going to be grandparents." You knew? So far, Eva's only told Julia, you, and me. Todd will tell his parents when they get back. I don't. I don't know what to say. I'm thrilled.
She's been practically floating all week.
Now I know why.
She just found out the week before you arrived."
Kat laughed. "I guess I need to buy another house."
They all chuckled at that. When Julia looked at him and smiled, Hank thought, things are going to be okay.
Epilogue. Kat did move to Asheville.
As much as she appreciated the offer to stay with them while she looked for a house, she wasn't about to do that. She rented a place for the 6 weeks it took her to find something she wanted. She purchased a house a neighborhood away from Hank's, though she was often over at his house since that was where most family gatherings occurred. She finished that season for the network, but she didn't sign a new contract. She had built her credentials enough that she could be a guest on enough U.S. cable shows to keep a small income and some name and face recognition. She maintained her YouTube channel and produced content with her mom, Amber, and Bella, which provided her a small revenue stream from. She had saved well over the last few years and wouldn't be hurting for money. Scott and Tina helped her get another PBS show off the ground, but on a much smaller scale. She had no intention of trying to grow it like her last one, but with her existing bank account, these small income streams would be enough for her to live on. She sold the house in Pittsburgh. She thought she would be sadder, but living near Eva and Eric allowed her to build new memories to add to the old. Having her mother there was tremendous, and they spent many mornings during the summer driving up and down the Blue Ridge Parkway, together, sampling treats that the local growers were selling, which she used in some of her shows.
Eva and Todd had a healthy and beautiful boy. Kat was in the delivery room with them when she delivered.
She was extremely thankful that Eva had asked her and that she was living there to experience the birth along with everyone. Kat made arrangements for Julia to meet the best suppliers she knew in Spain while they all vacationed together. It was a great vacation, and they visited a dozen cities across the country and ate in several Michelin-starred restaurants where Kat knew the chef. The shift in work and living was a dramatic change for the better for her. She embraced the change from hot mama to aging gracefully on TV. As long as she was close to her family, she could accept whatever life threw at her. Even with Kat there, Marlies continued to live with Hank and Julia because they, and the girls, loved having her with them, and she loved sharing the rest of her life with her family every day. As for Hank and Julia, their life was great. Julia's job was exactly what she wanted, giving her a good mix of helping to run the restaurants while occasionally cooking. Kat took the spotlight at that year's charity event, but after that, there were several nights each year when the two of them shared the spotlight with proceeds donated to the food bank. Hank split his time between helping Scott finish restoring his house and helping Morgan run the food bank. Restarting his life with Julia and the girls had been life-saving for him. Having Marlies live with them was a rewarding experience for all of them. Morgan and Bill missed having Julia and the girls living with them, but that was lessened by the frequency of family events. They were mostly focused on Julia being happy, which she was. But even more importantly, it was about the girls. For them, what had begun as excitement regarding Mr. Hank several years ago had turned into a deep love for the man who had become their daddy. That's it. Thank you for your time. Seriously. I hope you enjoyed it. Comments are always appreciated.